always used to lay you clean up the messes. Down on my knees, thought I couldn't stand up on my own. Turns out sometimes you're stronger alone.
Hey, Mike Shimwell here, host of the Shunned podcast. If you want to tell your story, buy a t-shirt, maybe some merch, maybe get some additional resources, you can do so at shunnedpodcast.com. If you want professional help to heal and recover from life in a cult so that you can figure out who you are and what you want out of this life, or maybe you just want to figure out where the patterns from the past might still be showing up in your life today, you can find help at exjwhelp.com. Again, that's exjwhelp.com. And every episode of the Shun podcast has helpful links in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. So if you need something, you can always look there. And now let's meet our guest.
My name's Felicity. I'm 43 years old. I was one of Jehovah's Witnesses and I am shunned.
All right, Felicity. So how did you come to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses in the first place? Is it something you were born into?
No, I wasn't born into it. So my mum had a Bible study. She was, I think, 2 Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on her door when I was 6 months old. And she had a Bible study for about 6 months. I think she went to a convention at the time, and then decided it wasn't for her. She was still married to my dad at that point, so, and he was very much not interested in religion in any way. So I think she kind of liked the attention side of it, and the learning side, but then because she had little kids as well at the time, it wasn't something that she pursued. So then we fast forward on a few years. We always had the Bible stories book. That's one thing that I remember right from the word go. As soon as I could read, that was something that she kept, and that we had. And then when I was 7, my dad left the family. And very, very soon after that, the Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on our door again. Not the same ones. We were in a different area at this time. And yeah, she started up a Bible study again. And then this time it was very, very fast. And yeah, she was baptized within a year. And yeah, so ever since I was 8 years old, I've been a Jehovah's Witness. Yeah.
So the first time that she came in contact and had the study, you said she had some little kids.
Yeah.
So I guess how many siblings did you have back then, or what was the situation?
So when she first had a Bible study, it was just me. I'm the eldest child, and I was 6 months old. But then she went on to have my brother a few years after that. So he's just under 4 years younger than me. And then it was just me and my brother in the family. My dad went on to have other children when he left, so I have 4 other half siblings. But yes, it's my kind of childhood and growing up was just me and my brother. Yeah.
Well, I was thinking, the first time that she comes in contact with them, she's got a new kiddo pretty much. I mean, you were pretty young, and a lot of times you find, again, there's a vulnerability somewhere, there's been some life change. Jehovah's Witnesses come knocking, a person seeking, especially a new parent, maybe is seeking a moral structure or something that they can give their kids. And then later, dad has exited the family situation, and here she is again, vulnerable, and here they come again. And
I think the first time she had just come out of a real terrible episode of psychosis. She had, I think it's called puerperal psychosis, which is like an extreme postnatal depression. So I was taken away from her at birth, and lived with my auntie Teresa and my dad for probably about 3 months, I think, while she was in a psychiatric facility. So she was obviously very vulnerable at that time. She'd just come out of this facility, and it was a couple of months later, and then Jehovah's Witnesses knocked on the door. offered her life will be better at such and such a point, in the future. And yeah, she must have thought that sounds great. Yeah. And then sort of, had a Bible study at that point.
Wow. How was your little brother when she really started taking to it? When your
So
dad left and then she re-engaged with them?
yeah, so she again, after my little brother was born, had an episode of psychosis. This time she got to, I think things had moved on a little bit in treatment and how they understood things. So she was able to go into a psychiatric facility with him. So
Mm.
they were never separated. But by the time then my dad left, my brother was 3. Um, and then by the time my mum got baptized, he was 4. So he was very small still. And he doesn't remember anything else apart from being a Jehovah's Witness. So yeah, I was 8, he was 4 when mum got baptized. So yeah, to him it was a lifelong thing. Whereas I still remember, I don't remember much, but I can remember having Christmas. I don't remember any birthdays, but I obviously know I would have had some. But yeah, I have a 1 or 2 memories of Christmas Day. But he has no memory at all. So he was very, very young at the time. Yeah.
So this is usually where I would ask you what the worldview is that the religion gave you, but I think I'd like to add the caveat of obviously something was changed, well, perhaps was changing for you because you were 8
Yeah.
when not that I mean, I was 8 as well, roughly, and I remember a life
Hmm.
pre and post
Yeah.
that moment. So,
Yeah.
can I ask for you maybe what was the change in worldview for you,
Mm.
or how did things adjust for you when that happened?
Yeah, so I have memory of a few things actually. So I think my teacher at the time, I remember she raised some concerns because my mum started a Bible study just before one Christmas, um, and immediately cancelled Christmas. That was straight off the bat, no Christmas. I think other people might have had one last Christmas, but mum was very, no, we're not doing that at all. So obviously went into my school and said we have joined this religion, and no long Felicity can no longer have any part in Christmas activities. And I think my teacher was obviously understandably pretty concerned, especially as my dad had left fairly recently, so there'd been some big upheaval anyway in the family. And I think she raised it, but unfortunately back in, this would have been in the 80s, late 80s, um, there wasn't much in the way of safeguarding or following up on concerns about children. So I think, as long as we were turning up to school and kind of looked okay, um, they didn't pursue it, or it didn't go any further. Um, so that sticks in my mind because I was at the time I was we were making a nativity mural to go on the wall at school, and I think I'd been given one of the sheep that I had to make, one of the lambs in the barn or whatever. And I had to stop making it. I'd started it, but I was not allowed to finish that lamb, which upset me at the time because I got quite invested in that process. So that's the memory that really sticks in my mind. And then also with friends, I had some really good friends at that point as a child. I remember mum getting cross or saying things that I could hear, which seemed to indicate that some of their parents were quite concerned about this big sudden change as well. Um, but of course, the witnesses were telling her, oh, you've got to expect this, that's what the Bible says, that people won't understand and you'll be persecuted, and it means you're doing the right thing. Um, so any of those concerns that anybody quite rightfully raised were just kind of dismissed. And then I couldn't play with my friends anymore like I could at school, but then a lot of those friendships fizzled out, which was really sad. And then, I played with Jehovah's Witness children instead. And that was, yeah, it's like we kind of just cut everyone off. I think mum had one friend that she kept. But again, it was on a much more sort of distanced basis. So she'd see her occasionally for like a cup of tea. But that would be that. So yeah, we just kind of, I think the overall feeling was that we cut everyone off, and then started this whole massive thing. Like it just took over every minute of our lives, really. Especially back then when you had a book study on a Tuesday, we had a meeting on a Thursday and another one on a Sunday, and you had your ministry on the Saturday, or in the week, like if it was holiday times, we'd have to go out, on a weekday morning as well. So it just felt like we'd gone from nothing to do with that straight into this huge, huge change that was taking up our entire lives. Yeah. And mum was not someone to do anything by halves, so she really leapt into it. So all that we would socialize with the witnesses, we would just do nothing but, yeah, activities to do with that, really. So it was a big change.
It's really tough. Isolation is something that you see in any type of abuse. Someone is
Yeah.
being isolated, and when you see somebody pull away from all of their previous social contacts
Mm.
and extricate themselves from one life completely like that, to go into an insular group and to
Yeah.
change all the ways that they're behaving and everything. It I know that myself from talking to relatives
Mm.
who saw it from afar, who watched my family or who
Yeah.
watched my wife Jenny's family
Yeah.
change. It's quite stressful on them, and
Yeah.
they are concerned because
Yeah.
this isn't normal behavior. It's not healthy
No.
behavior for someone to just cut bait and run like that. That's
No,
an
that's right.
odd thing to have.
It must be terrifying for anybody who's looking in on it. Suddenly, all of a sudden, after this big life event had happened of my dad leaving, mum is just throwing us into some, which is to them a really strange. They probably don't view it as a cult, but something akin to that, really, some odd subsection of Christianity that do all these strange things and go knocking on people's doors and that. And to be so involved in it and then cut people off and just have all this new set of people and friends around, I think it must be really scary for people to watch happening quite helplessly, because of course, as I said, you get told that this is normal, people are going to say things against it, so therefore you view that as that you're doing the right thing, which is obviously how it's designed to get you, is that you brush off people's very natural concerns as them being against you, but then that's what Jehovah's Witnesses do best, isn't it?
Yeah, isn't it amazing
Everyone's
how
against them. Yeah.
yeah, how manipulative they are from the beginning. I mean, from the time you
Yeah.
start studying with someone, you tell them, hey, there are going to be people in your life who are going to see you making changes and they're not going to like this and they're going to
Yeah.
object to it. And instead of saying, and that shows that maybe you're doing something weird, and that shows that you're making changes to do the right thing, to serve the one and
Yeah.
only true God, and everything else out there is Satan's, and that's basically the devil trying to stop you from
Yeah.
doing the right thing. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the manipulation there, the
Yeah.
gaslighting. It's
Mm,
masterfully done.
absolutely. Because you can't, if you've invested in that belief process, there's nothing, you can't, that explains everything then, doesn't it? You just
Yep.
have to say that one thing, and then everyone's concern or anything that people are saying that doesn't suit the organization is just explained away immediately, isn't it? Oh, well, that's Satan doing that. And that means we're doing the right thing. And
Yeah, you're
yeah,
not
it's
wrong. The whole world's
very
wrong.
clever. Everybody else is wrong. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is which is crazy when you think about it. Especially when you see it from the outside, it's very obvious, isn't it, that that is a big manipulation. But you just can't see it at the time. No.
So talking about the aspect of a worldview change for you,
Mm,
so with all of these changes, how did it make you see the world around you? Like, were you suddenly,
mm,
you obviously had a big change in what you could do. Um,
yeah.
were you resistant to that change, or in any way did that change seem
Mm,
natural, normal, okay?
yeah. I think we were not resistant at all to it. Um, I think by that point, my mum has always been a very mentally ill person. As well as that, she uh, has been emotionally and physically abusive. I think by that point already, age 8, I was walking on eggshells the whole time. So my natural inclination as a child was to keep quiet, do what you're told, don't rock the boat, don't draw attention to yourself. So I think that's kind of how I went with it, is that, okay, we're doing this now. And I just accepted it and got on with it quietly. I, yeah, I
So it
don't
doesn't really
ever
matter what
remember.
you felt. You just
No,
knew your feeling
no,
was, I have to go along with whatever
yeah,
mom
yeah,
says because
yeah.
otherwise it's dangerous.
Otherwise, there's danger. So I think because already by that age, that was very much how my mind had been trained. I didn't even question. I don't think a question even came into my head about it. Um, I think by that point, it all any kind of sense of self or other children might speak up and say, oh, I don't want to do that. I don't want to sit in a 2 hour long meeting 3 times a week. That sounds horrible. All of that side of me was gone already. So I was very much, yeah, in the just get on with it, just don't say anything, just carry on and accept this another new thing that was happening in life. And also, the witnesses are excellent at, um, you know, making it seem great initially. So we were, a single parent family on a very low income who were taken in specifically by the lady, the sister that was studying with my mum. She then went on to have a Bible study with me. And yeah, that whole section of the congregation kind of just took us under their wing. So we were being looked after. We had lots of people to, talk to and see. Obviously, it all came with a price, so to speak. So we had to be going on the ministry. We had to be at all the meetings. We had to keep up this high level of showing that we were a spiritual family. But if we were doing that, then you got the benefits. You got the perks of people, being kind to you or taking you under their wing or whatever it was. So I think definitely for my mum, that was the big draw. She, yeah, got some friends, she got some company, she got some help. Um, and yeah, she was well invested in the sort of, if you do everything right, then this is what you get. These are the perks. But yeah, it was.
Okay. Well, let's talk about those perks, or let's talk a little bit about what life was like. Let's start with at the Kingdom Hall. So
Mm,
your mom was getting some help there as far as with the kids, whatever, other people
yeah.
around, maybe made a friend or two. Were
Mm,
you all a family that was at the meetings all the time? Were you all super regular? I mean, you said it, she pretty
yeah.
much goes all in. So were you
Yeah.
all super dubs
Yeah.
at this time? Were you
Yeah.
really into it? And
Yeah.
how'd you feel about it if you were?
Yeah. So we were. So we went from zero to everything immediately. But it was done in such a way that it was very pressurized or I felt very pressured by it as a child. So, So, for example, I had a personal Bible study with the lady that gave Mum a Bible study, but it wasn't an enjoyable experience for me. It was just an hour where I just felt really uncomfortable, very pressured. I was made to learn a scripture every single week, and then I had to recite that scripture. And if I didn't, then I'd get told off for not doing it right or not remembering. So I just felt this horrible pressure. Um, Also, then I had to go, knock on doors pretty much straight away. So, 7, 8 years old, and I'm having to learn a full presentation. This is when the magazines had a cost, so you'd have to sell them essentially. It was like 30p, I think, 40p back then in England. And yeah, I remember being forced to learn this entire adult's presentation with and knocking. I remember so clearly knocking on my first door, and this lady came out and just sort of looked at me. And you can imagine, like, now as an adult, you're like, goodness me, what must that have looked like? And this small child just like parroting off some, thing um, that is obviously been learned and told to do by the adults that were with her. So yeah, I felt so uncomfortable. I always hated the ministry, and that kind of was the day one of me hating it, because it was so uncomfortable. I didn't like bothering people, and that felt incredibly pressured. Again, the ministry school, I had to do talks pretty much straight off. Um, it was so bad, and I should explain that the background underlying to all this was emotional, physical abuse. So if we didn't do these things, Mum would threaten us with the elders. She would beat me. The emotional abuse was constant. Um, so I was scared if I didn't do these things. And to the point where, when as a child, I would be trying to write a talk to give on the ministry school, she would basically shout at me and tell me how hopeless I was, how bad I was, how, this would be so embarrassing. Everyone would laugh at me. Um, I couldn't even write a talk, bearing in mind I was like 8, 9, 10 years old. This is not something you should be able to do at that age. So much so that for a long time, for decades afterwards, I kind of had this area in my brain where I could not write a talk. I was good at English at school. I could write you an essay. I can write you anything that's like secular, as it were. But writing talks, that part of my brain was destroyed from, I guess, the emotional abuse that went with writing talks. It just shut down. So everything, it wasn't just that it was new, it was that it came with, I think, because obviously Mum must have been feeling the pressure as well, but her response to anything was to be abusive to me about it. I think that's probably how she released some of her anxiety, how she let off steam. I don't know, but
Was that also, was she seeing you as an extension of her? And so therefore,
yeah, most
if
likely.
you didn't give a great talk, she was worried
Yeah,
how people
yeah,
would think about her.
yeah, for sure.
So yeah,
Because I
that's, I
think
mean,
when,
the narcissistic
especially,
way.
absolutely, I think, and as well, we were a single parent family. We didn't have an elder like as a dad or anything like that. And I think there's very much a hierarchy in congregations about
Mhm.
who are the families that are great and who are the ones that yes, you can work your way up to being kind of okay and people will trust you, but single parent family, no dad, no elder, nobody like that, no man. Yeah, it takes a lot longer for people to kind of trust that you are a good spiritual family. And I think, yeah, so that it was like you had to prove yourself even more constantly. So that pressure just felt immense, I think, and
Yeah.
probably did in a way for Mum as well. I'm not sure she would have kind of been self-aware enough to know that was what she was feeling. I think she was very much invested in the whole thing, but unfortunately the stress and the anxiety would come out and that would get put onto me. So yeah, that's kind of how it worked.
Was there anything in the meetings for you? Was it at least maybe relief from, I don't know, we'll get to your home life, but was it relief from
Mm.
something at home? Did you have any little friends? Was there, were some of the older folks nice to you, like a grandparent? Was there anything there that you found that you did like or attached to?
Yeah, so not really any older people. I think, as I'll, probably talk about later as I go along, I think I don't ever remember receiving much support from any of the adults in the congregation at any point. But yes, I did have friends who were children who were my age at the time. Yes, I can think of two friends especially who were very, very dear to me. And yeah, that side of things was great. I'd go to the meeting, I get to see them. Sometimes I'd be invited back to their house afterwards, and then we'd make a day of it. And then I'd get to play with them, and so that was great. That side, those friends in particular, we had lots of fun. One of them lived on a farm. It was great. We just run about all over the fields. See the animals. Probably do all sorts of dangerous things that we shouldn't have done, but like climbing big mountains of hay bales and things that aren't very safe. But yeah, there was that side of it that was nice. Yeah, so you sort of thought, well, if you get through the bit you don't like, then you get the good bit afterwards.
Oh, I mean, isn't that, again, it's on some level the nature of abuse. An abusive person
Yeah.
doesn't tend to be abusive literally 24/7. You have good moments with that
Mm.
person, which is why it's
Yeah.
so confusing to one's
Yeah.
emotions, and then why you also keep going back to that abusive well, because you're trying to get
Yeah.
that hit of something
Yeah.
good that you
Yeah.
knows there's somewhere
Yeah.
sometimes, so you keep going back even though
Yeah.
by and large it may be negative.
Yeah. And I think you get trained also into thinking that the negative is also good. So if
Sure.
I know certainly in Jehovah's Witnesses, if you're not suffering, if you're not having a miserable time, like enduring something, you're not doing it right. And there was such, especially at that time in the 80s and 90s, I don't know whether it was something particular to this country or whether that made it worse. It was very much like if you're not gritting your teeth and really having to sort of suffer through all this, then you're not doing it right. I think in later years, they tried to kind of change that mindset a little bit and try and make it like it was a fun thing to do and that, we had joy in Jehovah's service and everything. But certainly back then it was like, no, you should be feeling like this is a hard slog. Otherwise, yeah, you're not doing it right. So there was almost, I remember there were some members of the congregation, some elders in particular, that were very fixated on things like the persecution or, to the point that it was very unhealthy. But kind of that's how they've got their self-worth, I guess. Like, we're enduring this and because of that, that means I'm doing it right or I'm doing okay. Because you get told you're not doing it right all the time, don't you, obviously. So
Well, yeah,
you
right.
look,
They create the disease so they can sell you the cure. They've got you so down, and they're the ones
yeah,
beating you down. The
yeah,
persecution is
exactly.
from within, but
Yes, yeah,
you're so looking for that feeling that, I mean, a lot of people,
mm,
even after they leave Jehovah's Witnesses, they almost find themselves addicted to negativity, addicted to
yeah,
places that are full of outrage and irritation, because
yeah,
that feels like home. That's where you
yeah.
grew
That
up.
exactly. It feels very natural, doesn't it, to
Yeah,
go back
it
there?
really is.
Like it's just, yeah, all that,
Hmm.
yeah, all that pressure and I think they really ramped that up in more recent years, which was, as I'll probably speak about later, one of the reasons that I, really made me want to leave properly. That persecution complex, all these videos that are propaganda, really, and all these made up scenarios that kind of never happened, and just to feed into that mindset, I guess. But yeah, it was very much like that back then. And the meeting, nothing was a joy.
No, there's no
and
joy.
kind of there was no joy. um, and I remember things like in the meeting, I'd be sat there, and if I like was whispering with my brother, or if I was sat with a friend and accidentally whispered a bit much, or started drawing in my notebook instead of taking notes, then mum would pinch me really hard, and I just have this horrible. It was so upsetting. It wasn't just a light sort of like warning shot, as it were. It was really horrible. Like she really wanted to hurt me, and was so angry that a child was daring to draw something that wasn't, what she should be doing.
During the
There's
2 hours that she's sitting
doing
as a
two
little kid
hours,
in an
yeah,
adult meeting.
yeah, or an
Um,
all-day convention, for
oh,
example.
yeah.
You're sat there 6, 7 hours, and you can't do anything but take notes. It's just it's madness. And I think the pressure that's put on children, and also then from later on having my own children and feeling as an adult, as a parent, the pressure that's put on you to make them be quiet. These are children who are like babies and toddlers. Of course they can't be quiet, they can't listen, they can't write notes. And you're judged on that. So it's yeah, very
Well,
precious.
as you know, I just protested the big summer conventions here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
after one of the convention days, Jenny and I went to a restaurant, and we
Mm,
specifically went late because we didn't really want to be. We figured that the witnesses would fill a lot of the restaurants, and so
yeah, yeah.
while I didn't mind trolling them there if that was the case, I also really wasn't hungry immediately. It was very hot
Yeah,
out after the protest, and
yeah.
I wanted to go back, get a shower, and then we went out and
Hmm.
ate. But we went to this restaurant, this Italian place. I think it closed at 9. We got there about 7:30,
Yeah.
and it absolutely devastated me to look at the table behind us
Mm,
where there were these little stuffed animals out on the table. It was a family of Jehovah's Witnesses, and they had these
yeah,
kids. There's a little stuffed eagle and a Mickey Mouse or a Minnie Mouse, I think, doll, and like some other little dolly, and there are these two little girls over there, and then all these adults having adult conversations.
yeah,
They've
yeah,
been at that stupid convention since it starts at
yeah,
9:30, so they probably had an early morning at 8. It's going on 8 p.m. and they're sitting
yeah,
in this restaurant,
yeah.
and like
Still
nobody is
sitting. Yeah,
understanding that these are children that might
yeah,
just want to go play or move.
yeah, yeah.
And it was
Absolutely.
just it was absolutely heartbreaking to look back there. I noticed the stuffed eagle first, and I was like, "Oh no!" And then I
Mm,
saw the two little girls, and it
mm,
bothered me so much as
yeah,
the person I am today. As a witness, I would have seen nothing wrong with that. They're kids,
yeah,
man. What are you
yeah.
doing? They're
They are
kids.
kids. They are kids,
Um,
and there's no
Pressure.
there's just there's nothing. There's nothing given to like kids. They're just
Kids are
that.
expected to be
Yeah,
adults, little
yeah.
adults.
From the word go, you cannot be a child as a Jehovah's Witness, because immediately, even from you open your Bible book of stories or book of Bible stories, and you've got these hideous pictures in there that you're looking at, as a tiny child, and it's death and destruction, and, you have to do this, this, and this, otherwise you'll die at Armageddon. And it, you just don't get a chance to be a child who isn't in that way of thinking from the word go. Like it's just
Everything is death and destruction and
everything.
mayhem.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's really serious. And there's, you can't run about in the kingdom hall, you can't play or let off steam. And also you know, lots of children are pulled out into the back room and, smacked, like slapped, hit. And that's seen as okay. Like it's
What does
nobody. Yeah,
everybody do when the kid is getting dragged out of the
yeah,
auditorium and
people
he's going,
laugh.
no, no, no? What
Yeah,
does everybody do? They
yeah,
laugh.
people find it funny, which it's so disgusting. It used to, yeah, when I had my own children, it used to, yeah, make me really upset. Um, but it's just seen as funny. Yeah, it's like, oh, he's gonna get it sort of thing, and
Yeah.
it's not
Awesome.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
I can't
crazy.
imagine as an adult seeing a child being dragged off to be physically hurt and then not nobody lifting a finger to do anything about it.
Everybody
It's that
cheering it
sort of,
on,
yeah,
essentially.
finding it amusing. It's that sort of thing that I think a lot of the time Jehovah's Witnesses will say, well, no, we don't say that you can do these things, or we don't, that actually the whole culture allows these things to happen. So it allows abuse to happen.
Mhm.
They might not say from the platform, yes, you can, well, they do use the rod, don't they? They say use the
Yeah.
rod.
Don't
So
spare the
they do
rod.
they do with that one, but with other things, they might not explicitly say, you can beat your wife, for example, but then they'll have watchtowers saying, if you're a wife and you're getting beaten, you have to stay. Like that's
Mhm.
not a reason to leave a relationship. So just by their very nature, they cause these things to flourish, I think, and really, yeah, just happen and grow and be part of the culture, I guess, which is horrible.
Yeah, it's a horrible, depressing
Yeah,
culture.
yeah.
So can I ask, so what was school like for you? Did you go to regular school, or were you homeschooled? Was school any kind of respite from this world?
A little bit, yeah. I did go to school. I think although as I went through life, it got more and more ingrained in the culture that you should be homeschooled. But thankfully, I was never homeschooled. So yes, always went to school. I think it was sort of a double-edged sword, really, like two sides. So yes, I got to be out of the house, which was great. I got a rest from that. Also was with my friends, and I made friends, worldly friends um, who were really good friends, but only at school. Obviously, you can't not allowed to see them outside of school or mix with them in that way. So school, yeah, could be really fun. Um, but then also you've got that constant being different, which is really, really tough at times. So there'd be like collective worship and as what we call in this country an assembly, where all the children like go into the main hall or auditorium and have their updates for the day, but also that comes with a bit of you know worship if you're in a school that does that sort of thing. So we were never allowed to go into that. We were never allowed to take part in any of the Christmas activities or Easter or birthdays, or so there was always something that we weren't allowed to do. So you felt like you were just on high alert the whole time. You just can't relax. um you can't chill. You're just constantly waiting for someone to say something that you were going to have to stand up against, or you were going to have to walk out of, which is again real horrible pressure when you're a child, and especially as a teenager as well. It's just horrible because that's the time where you kind of want to blend in as much as possible. You don't want to make yourself a target. And here you are with this huge thing that is naturally making you a target.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, you're made to stand out as different in a
yeah.
weird and unbecoming way. And
Yeah.
I know, so I guess I'll ask, like here in the United States, as kids, every day of school began with the playing of the national anthem or
Mm,
the reciting of the Pledge of Allegiance. And as
yeah.
Jehovah's Witnesses, we were never allowed to do those things.
Mm,
Um, and so we would be forced to leave the classroom in front of everybody every morning, or maybe you have to sit while everyone else stands with their hand over their heart and recites this thing. Did you
yeah.
guys have anything, or this worship thing? Like, was there anything
Yeah.
that you all had to face on a regular basis in your country?
So yeah, we don't have anything like the Pledge of Allegiance or anything. But
Y'all need
if
to get more
you,
culty. You
yeah,
gotta, you gotta
I
worship
know.
your
We've got
country.
to have it. Yeah. I don't know what we're doing wrong. But no, yeah. So what we do have is a lot of our schools are church funded schools. So they are associated with the Church of England or, the Catholic Church. So therefore they put their own systems of daily worship in. So for example, in my school, there would be a like what we would call an assembly where everyone got together every morning. And what was so awful about it is that half of it would be fine and just kind of like what's happening in the day and just normal things. Um, and then kind of towards the end, they would start with the worship or they would say a prayer and a lot of the time, and this especially happened in senior school, which was when I was in my teens, we would be in the assembly and thinking, okay, everything's going fine. And then all of a sudden they would start talking about something that we weren't allowed to be in for. So you might well be sat in the middle of everyone, and you'd have to stand up and get up and walk out. And looking back, I kind of think, why did I why did I do that? Nobody would have ever known if I'd not. I could have just sat there. But again, it's
Here,
this pressure, and Jehovah is watching you. So you have that fear with you 24/7. So that makes you get up in front of everybody and walk out. And it's very humiliating. And I have horrible memories of sitting there so terrified that someone was going to say something that I'd have to then stand up and walk out. And it happened, yeah, many, many, many occasions, which was horrible. But yeah, it's that sort of thing, isn't it?
it's
The pressure you put on
brutal.
yourself. Mm,
Yeah, it's absolutely brutal. It's something that I don't know if most people will ever experience, is just that having to get up in the middle of that assembly and to walk
yeah.
out, or
Mm,
to, I remember going to a hockey game once and not realizing we were standing in front of the flags that were
oh no.
hanging from
Yeah.
the rafters. And all of a sudden we were walking to our seats and it's time for the playing of the
Oh no.
national anthem. And we just had to sit there with everyone
Yeah.
staring at us, and
Yeah. It's
it was
awful.
the most mortifying thing,
Yeah.
as you
Yeah.
have to be different, not face the flag, and maybe even sit down
Sit down.
and
Yeah, we
show
have.
your
Yeah,
dissidence.
we do.
Like it's
Bizarrely enough, yeah, we used to have that in this country as well. They don't do it so much anymore, but that's the only time the national anthem would happen is like at a theatre performance or something. It was very odd. So if you went out to see a show or something like that, everyone would stand for the national anthem except us, who would be sat down. And it's just so. Even at the time, I used to think this is not polite.
yes,
Like, it's not a polite thing to do. Everybody else
no,
is standing, and here we are sat down. And yes, I might not support the country or the government who was, in power at the time personally, but still, it's kind of rude, isn't it? Like, and I'm very embarrassing to not, you know, at least stand up with everybody else. But yeah,
well, and to not even have, the real problem is that you don't even have the choice
no,
to decide for yourself. You're being coerced, like
no,
you said. Again, it shows that nature of choice. You're like, well, why did I choose to get up and walk out? Because you've been coerced. There's fear,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
undue influence there that is pushing you to
yeah,
do something. You don't even
yeah,
realize you have a choice because there
no.
really is none in your
There
life.
is no choice. No,
We were
there is
pushed
never,
and
never a
abused
choice.
out of that
Yeah,
that free will.
yeah, very much so. If the choice, if the better choice is standing up, walking out, humiliating yourself, and probably getting bullied later for it, if that's the better choice, then just how scared are you
Mhm.
of Jehovah and the whatever would happen to you if you didn't, which is horrible.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah,
It really is.
yeah,
Well, let's bounce over to your home life then. So what was life? What was the temperature of the room? You've touched on it a little bit.
yeah.
But what was the life like at home?
Yeah, so obviously my mum had periods of intense mental illness throughout my childhood. I think because from the word go, I was separated from her as a baby because she had this psychosis. I think she never bonded properly with me. I think because I was a girl as well, she had real issue with that for some reason. So yeah, I was kind of the scapegoat, I would say, from birth. So while my dad was around, he kind of how to describe it? I think he took a lot of took some of some of the sort of abuse that was coming from mum on himself, and so I would get a certain amount. Um, but then when he left, it was just me, and my brother kind of had emotional after effects from our childhood as well, but in a different way. He was what's probably termed as the golden child, so he could kind of do no wrong. If there was ever any money for anything, he would get the thing. It was. But I think for him that had also some horrible effects because there was abuse that came with that as well, and to kind of know that your sister was bearing the brunt of things and you weren't, I think is horrible in itself.
Survivor's guilt in its own way for
Yeah,
some people.
for sure. So I think, yeah, so when my dad left, things just went into a whole new level of crazy, basically. So she was most of the time very emotionally abusive. So that was a daily thing. Like she'd just come out with the most horrible of things. Like I remember she watched the film Sophie's Choice, which is about where with Meryl Streep, where it's in Nazi Germany, and I think they end up in a concentration camp, and she's got a boy and a girl child, and she has to choose between the children who to send to the gas chamber and who to let live. She had one choice, and I think that's what the whole thing is about. And I just remember out of the blue, my mum saying, "Oh, I watched this film, Sophie's Choice, and this was what it was." And I would have had no problem making that choice at all because I would have chosen you to go to the gas chamber, like without question, and I would have kept your brother. And when you're like 9 or 10, that's a lot. That's a big thing to hear because it's said so casually, but it's very much designed to hurt. And I think a lot of the emotional abuse side of things was that really horribly vile things would be said, but very casually. And then she kind of wait to sort of see your reaction. And if there was a reaction, then she'd almost she'd be happy because it had done what it was supposed to do. If there wasn't a reaction, then she would get cross. She would get angry, and then that could lead into worse things. She would then, yeah, get kicked over into the anger side. She would have complete loss of control, basically, where she would become. I think the best way of describing it is like a wild animal, which is terrifying. And when your parent is coming at you like literally tooth and claw, and you're having to defend yourself or run, it's a horrible circumstance. And then they catch you obviously when you're small. When I was bigger, I was strong enough to hold her off a lot of the time. But when I was small, you get caught. And then yeah, I all sorts of things. I was dragged around the floor by my hair, had carpet burns, bruised, hit, spat on, pinched, burned. She'd, have knives out. There'd be all sorts of things that would happen. Or, she'd hit me. I remember once I ran up the stairs and I thought, oh, okay, I'm going to make it. I'm going to make it to my bedroom. Made it, slammed the door shut. Unfortunately, didn't have a lock on the door. Managed to get into my duvet. This is a thing that I did often. And you'd roll yourself up in the duvet because that was some protection. And if she wasn't, like, it depends how much energy she had. If she had less energy, she kind of see the duvet ball and think, okay, I can't be bothered to actually hurt this child at this time. If she was in a real rage and she was in this like wild animal kind of mode, she would just rip that duvet off. I remember her beating me with that we call them plugs in the UK. I don't know, it's like the electrical socket, with the prongs, the three pins
Hmm.
we have in the UK. And she'd just get one of those and, be going to town on me with one of those. We had the wooden spoon, which was always a big threat. But she wouldn't just do that on your butt or anywhere that was slightly more padded. She would, take my hand and then get the bone that was running across, your wrist, and then start, walloping on the bit that would hurt you the most. So yeah, it was it was a lot, and there have been many instances where I kind of literally feared for my life. Especially as I got older, it kind of got worse. I think because I started having opinions of my own, which was not okay. So therefore, she would go into these rages, more often. She would call them our kind of teenage tussles. She'd say, "Oh, mums and daughters are always a bit volatile, in the teenage phase," and she'd write it off as that. Um, so you'd get times where, for example, she I'd come in on her, she'd be trying to slit her wrist with a knife, for example. She'd never be very good at it because it was always very half-hearted, the kind of self-harm. She'd fly into a rage and then she'd still have the knife. And I have a lifelong phobia of knives now because of this sort of thing, which was terrifying. Or on a couple of occasions, she had, scalding hot water or tea in her hand, and she'd throw that. I've had that in my face, and been scalded. But then afterwards, she'd calm. Well, she wouldn't calm. She'd go to her room. It always followed a formula. So you'd say the wrong thing. She'd fly into the rage, be like a wild animal. You'd be very hurt. Then she'd run to her room. She would then become very upset. And so she'd be wailing and crying and rocking and carrying on and, saying, almost babbling a lot of the time, no, nonsense. But always then she was the victim of it. So,
And then you have to comfort her.
and then I had to comfort her. So I remember as kids, we would go around the house at this stage and we'd be looking for, any coins that had fallen down the back of the sofa or, anything we had in our piggy bank or our money box. And we would go out and we would buy her a present and we would give it to her to say sorry. And that continued all through my life, really. And she would accept the present and, you might get the silent treatment for about a week. Afterwards, she'd accept the present and then it would move on to the next thing. But yeah, that was what home was like, kind of beneath the surface. Yeah,
I mean,
which
that's
was a lot.
yeah, Felicity. I mean, I'm so sorry that you had to go through that. I mean, nobody should have to be treated that way.
Mm.
I knew that you had to comfort her because it's something that I've seen myself in my own family at times, and it's something that
Yeah,
is also something that my wife would deal with her dad, who would beat her, and then then he wanted
yeah,
to play afterward to make it right.
yeah. Because I
Like,
think
now
it
that
soothes
I'm
them, doesn't it,
done
in some way?
getting
Mm.
my aggression out on you and I've hit you and beat you,
Yeah,
now let's play, because
yeah,
now I feel bad and I
yeah.
need to
No,
end this on a better note. And it's
yeah. It's just about them making them feel better, isn't it? Afterwards, that's what it is. It's not about making you feel
yep.
better. It's about trying to smooth everything over, and they don't have to feel like a bad person because everything's kind of gone back to being okay for the moment.
All about them.
Yeah, yeah,
All
for
about
sure.
them. You're just the tool
Always.
they're using, and it's
Yeah,
but
yeah,
you know, uh, in any situation where I know you had mentioned earlier that teachers had noticed a change, or
yeah,
other parents of your little worldly friends at the time, well, not never JW friends, noticed a change when she became one of Jehovah's Witnesses. Um, it's just such a shame that these aren't the things that
yeah,
get noticed a lot of times, and
yeah, yeah,
uh, in the congregation, again, when everyone's laughing that a child is being ripped
yeah,
out of his seat and taken back to be beaten, and everybody
yeah,
thinks it's hilarious, um, you've created a scenario and a situation by which horrible things happen. And
yeah, yeah,
why would it's and also just the manipulation of it all, the psychological damage.
yeah,
I'm really sorry. Obviously, I'm sorry that your brother had to go through and see all of this too. I'm sorry that you had
yeah,
to. It's just such a
yeah,
horrible, it's so
yeah.
horrible.
Again, I think it's something in which being a Jehovah's Witness kind of encourages this sort of behavior almost, or it doesn't stop it. Because I mean, I must have often, for example, if she'd just been become enraged about something and hurt me, I'd walk to the meeting. It was a couple of miles from our house at the time to the meeting, to the Kingdom Hall, and I'd just get up and go. She wouldn't go because obviously she'd be in a state. My brother wouldn't go; he was too little, and he would have shut himself in his room at this point. Obviously, um, I would get ready for the meeting and walk there just to get out of the house. And I remember having brothers and sisters drive past me in the car on this journey, and they had room in their car, but they didn't stop. I remember turning up to the Kingdom Hall many times as, a 10, 11-year-old child. Obviously, visibly, I'd been crying at some point that day. I can't have looked okay. I would have had bruises. I would not have had the capacity at that age to cover them all up. Um, and nobody even sat with me. So I'd be sat alone in the Kingdom Hall often. And that was very isolating. And I think it's because people must have known something was happening, perhaps, maybe not what, but that something was wrong. And rather than asking about it, or there being a safeguarding process, or worrying about a child, they would rather avoid the issue because, above all things, you cannot bring reproach upon Jehovah's name. It is the thing that is drilled into everybody. So you cover up anything rather than, that's why as a child I never would have approached a teacher or another adult and said what was happening, because you're bringing reproach on Jehovah's name. You can't do that. Like, if the police got involved, or social services, or anybody like that, it would look bad. So you just have that in your head the whole time. And because of that, nobody ever gets told. You never let on what's happening. Or you lie. If I remember, I had a school nurse ask me how I got some burns at one point. Um, and I just lied about it because, that's better than saying, oh, I had, a boiling cup of tea thrown in my face, or it because all the time it's the most important thing is Jehovah's name, and not, bringing
Can't let
anything
people on the
negative
outside
upon
know
that.
that Jehovah's Witnesses behave this way. That's
Yeah,
that's what you're trying to do. You're not allowing
yeah,
people on the outside to know
no,
that Jehovah's Witnesses are
no,
anything less than perfect.
yeah, that's right. And
And
that's
even
so
if you tell the
important to them.
witnesses are go ahead, sorry.
No, 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 I was just going to say that's so important to them. It's way
Mhm.
more important, unfortunately, as we know, with things like, the Australian Royal Commission and things. They will lie through their teeth
Oh yeah.
on the witness stand rather than admit that the organization isn't perfect and that these things go on.
They value
Yeah,
appearance over the protecting children. And
always. Yeah,
I know for myself, my mom would go to the elders all the time about my dad, who was an elder. And I know that the elders would come ask me questions, and I
mm,
was honest with them about who my dad was, and nothing ever
yeah,
happened. So
yeah,
even if you've told, even if I guess there's two witnesses in the same household, my
yeah,
dad was still an elder. They just gave him talks on happy family life so he could stand
yeah,
on stage on a Sunday
yeah,
preaching about how happy his family was when we all hated his guts and he pretty much hated us. So, I mean,
yeah,
it's just
yeah,
my mom would leave the auditorium,
yeah.
but still, nothing was done.
No,
They don't care. They
no,
just want to make it look good. It's appearance over substance, and that's why it's
absolutely.
so frustrating to hear people talk about Jehovah's Witnesses and say what good people they are, or
Yeah,
oh, they're the
yeah,
best people. Are they?
yeah,
Are they?
yeah, exactly. Because
I
if
mean, they
people
say they're
knew,
the best people,
yeah,
and some
yeah,
people have bought into that, just like Donald Trump thinks he's the best person.
exactly.
But that doesn't. But
It
that's just
doesn't
a
mean that they
narcissist
are.
talking,
Yeah, for sure.
right? I
I think
mean,
they think if they say it enough, then people will believe it. And obviously some people do believe it,
yeah,
but
it
yeah,
works.
it does work.
You can snow
It does work.
people if you put
Mm,
forth the right appearance. You can make them
yeah,
think that you're something that you're not. It's horrible.
yeah, yeah.
Again, I just think I'm just so sorry. Send the biggest virtual hug. That's awful, and
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like if I
you never
can
deserved any of that.
relate another circumstance, which kind of also shows how much they don't want secular authorities to get involved. I think when I was 11, my mum had another massive breakdown and she was taken into a psychiatric facility for, yeah, it's about 2 or 3 months, I think, overall. Again, I was 11, my brother was 7. And instead of getting social services involved, getting us put in foster care, like officially, um, it was very much thought that no one else should be involved and this could be taken care of within the congregation. Um, because, of course, especially back then, mental illness in itself was a terrible thing. Like, you didn't have enough trust in Jehovah, apparently, if you were mentally ill.
Pray it
I,
away.
I remember there were people that said that to my mum, and it made her very upset at the time. So yeah, mum was away for 2, 3 months, and we were unofficially fostered by two sets of people. Um, so the first family was an elder and his wife and children, um, and it was just horrific. It was beyond awful. It was like going from one abuse to another, really, except they were more neglectful rather than outrightly abusive. I remember I was unwell. I had a sickness, a vomiting bug, and I was still, 11 is very little, really. So I woke up in the middle of the night, and I remember I could not make it to the bathroom. So I threw up on my bed, which, I get is as a parent, it's not what you want to wake up in the night to, is it? Your child has
Well,
just done that
sure,
and
but it
you've got to
wasn't
get it cleaned up.
intentional.
But it's no one's fault. It
Yeah,
happens, and it's one of those things. And I just remember being screamed at in the middle of the night, and them saying things like, even so and so, our other smaller daughter, she can get to the toilet on time, and this is disgusting, and you need to clean this up. And so I did. Um, and then obviously the next day I was very, very unwell, but I couldn't go to school. But they just left me there and locked the door. So all day long, and it was a long day. I was on my own. I couldn't get up and get myself water. I was that unwell. I couldn't certainly fix any food, or there was nobody that checked I was okay. They didn't ring another, brother or sister and say, can you just go in and check on her? There was nothing. It was just very much like we were this awful burden that they were having to put up with. And I used to wonder why they'd ever said yes to this, like why. But I think it was sort of more about appearances. It was, you know, they wanted to be seen to be helping rather than actually helping. I remember there's times where we didn't get fed. They didn't. My brother was, you know, 7. He didn't know how to turn on a shower and like wash himself without supervision at that age. So he didn't wash. They never showed him. And I remember it was probably about 4 weeks in, and brothers and sisters used to take us every day to visit mum in the facility. And one of them was just like, when was the last time you had a wash? Because obviously he stank. Um, and neither of us could remember because I was too small to realize that he wasn't washing, and he was too small to actually ask how to use a shower or get on with it himself. So we were very, very neglected. And it got worse and worse and worse until the point where I was at one of my friend's houses. She had taken us for the day and gave us dinner. They were the family that lived on the farm. Um, and she was a lovely, lovely person. Also, happily, none of them are Jehovah's Witnesses now, which is really nice to hear. But yeah, she was a really good, kind human being. And she asked me what was wrong. And I said, I don't want to go back there. I can't go back there. And she accepted that and kind of understood what I was saying. So I remember her phoning my mum and asking if she could take us in. My mum was very cross about that, obviously, because, you know, you don't say no to an elder or you don't scorn an elder's help. But I think, thankfully, this lady managed to persuade her that it was serious enough and that she was happy to look after us. And then it was like night and day. We had 6 weeks of being looked after properly by, as you should be, by a parent. So again, I was unwell during that time. I think I had flu. And she looked after me like I'd never been looked after before. I had soup, I had, you know, everything. She would stay home with me. Yeah, she would feed us. She would, you know, help my brother with his personal, you know, sort of washing, and taught him how to have a proper wash and what to do. Yeah, it was. I look back fondly on those few weeks. She was lovely, and yeah, it was great.
So it's
But
the people with humanity intact that seem to leave. It's not, you know, the
yeah,
others just saw you all as
the
an
others are still,
object,
yeah, yeah,
not
and
a human.
he's still an elder, that guy. Yeah, still the same old, same old. Last time I saw
Jehovah's
him, you
loving
know,
organization.
absolutely, yeah. But apart from the horrible experiences, it's them not allowing external help to come in, because again, they're worried about what that looks like, you know. And because of that, there are some really, really dangerous situations. I mean, that situation was horrible, but it could have been so much worse. For example, I'm sure there have been many people in that situation who have been put with someone who had sexually abused them or something, and that's how it happened. But nobody's monitoring anything. Nobody's checking if children are okay. It's all about what it looks like, or what the brand, I guess, of Jehovah's Witnesses looks like, to everyone else. So therefore, there was never any external help, from anyone, because it's just, you know, it's not allowed.
Yeah.
And I think,
You said it, protect the brand. That's what it is. It's about
yeah,
protecting the brand, making sure that
yeah, for sure.
it looks squeaky clean, and we don't really care what
Yeah,
the realities underneath that are.
yeah, yeah, definitely. So that was my experience of kind of why things never ever got out, or why we were never ever helped or anything got any better. Obviously, you know, nothing changed until I left home. Even the day before my wedding day, when I was 21, my mum attacked me, and I walked down the aisle in the Kingdom Hall covered in bruises on my arms, these big welts that had kind of come up and swelled. I did my best covering them up with makeup. But yeah, so it just continued right to the day that I left.
Um,
Yeah.
so obviously the situation at home was, I don't know, what is the word that you even use to describe that? It was awful. I don't think
Yeah.
there's a word that touches what it sounds like the intensity was there. Again,
Mm.
just appalling. So sorry that you had to go through that. Um, was there, as you went through your teenage years, or were there seminal moments or moments in there? I guess, I don't know, did you get baptized somewhere in there? That's a big moment as a witness. Like, was there
Yeah.
anything that happened in there where you that was noteworthy? Hey, quick announcement here. If you're enjoying getting to know our guests today and you'd like an opportunity to know them better beyond their story here, I actually have another podcast of sorts called The Back Room. Yes, like taking somebody into the back room at the Kingdom Hall. I'm taking each guest now into the back room and we're going to have a little conversation. 5 quick hitting questions and answers from them about subjects and topics that maybe we're not always discussing here on the podcast. So if you'd like to get to know them more, you have an opportunity to see a little video of each individual from the time that you join. And you also get to interact with these individuals because if they're willing, of course, if they're comfortable, we'll provide their socials and you guys can connect. And support one another, and maybe you make a new friend out of it. I don't know. But I know people really connect to a lot of the guests here, and it's a great way to connect even more. And while you're doing so, you're also supporting me and all the work that I put into this, all the time, the money, the energy, and you get a bonus for it as well. So go to patreon.com/shunned and just join the back room tier and you'll get all the information sent right to you after the episode is released so that you can go further and go deeper and get to know our guests better. And perhaps they'll get to know you too. Speaking of which, now let's get back to our guests.
Yeah. So I got baptized when I was 14. Um, Again, just because you think it's something you need to do. I don't ever remember feeling like I was doing it from my own sort of feelings, other than everybody else was getting baptized. It was something that was encouraged. People that were baptized later than kind of that age were seen as, not spiritual people, or there was something wrong with them. So kind of this was the age where all the pressure was on. So yeah, I did my baptism questions, got baptized, and kind of didn't think anything more of it at the time, because nobody sits you down, do they, at the time and says to you, by the way, if you get baptized, if at such a date you decide that this isn't for you anymore, you're going to lose everyone. So yeah, to me it was just kind of something that happened. But then that kind of left me open to a lot more pressures, I guess. So then it's like, you need to, especially as I got near the end of my school life, it was, you need to pioneer. I remember I got asked to go on the assembly, the circuit assembly platform, to talk about how, despite my good grades at school and their encouragement for me to go to university, I had stood up and said no. I didn't want to
What a
do
great
that.
example of turning down educational
And
opportunity.
everyone clapped about that.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I
It's a backwards
still
world.
still think of that now. I'm in my low paying job and have no no degree or anything. It makes it a lot harder in now I've left.
Yes.
Obviously there's things I can do about that, but it's keeping everybody at that level, isn't it? So that nobody can progress or learn anything different. Or so yeah, this was very celebrated. And then I got pulled out of school. We have what's called GCSEs that you do when you are, it's exams you do when you are 15. And then you have, at 18, you have another set of exams called A levels. And then you would go to university and do a degree. That's how it works in the UK. So I did my GCSEs because that's compulsory, or was at the time compulsory to do. Then I did a year of A levels because I was good at school. I had got good grades, and was predicted to get really good A level results. But then got pulled out of school by mum, and encouraged encouraged to pioneer. So yes, I stopped my schooling at that age, and got a part-time job and was a regular auxiliary pioneer for probably 4 years, I think,
What
between about
was
17 and 21.
for those who may listen who don't know what that is,
Mm,
what does a regular auxiliary pioneer
okay.
mean?
So back then, it was a 60-hour requirement in the ministry. So you had to do at least 60 hours a month, going door to door, basically, or having Bible studies or whatever it was, which is a lot, especially when you're working and stuff as well. And yeah, it led me at the time to almost have a breakdown. It was so pressured. I remember me and another sister who was also regular auxiliarying because she had small children and, had a lot on her plate. We were both told off by a circuit overseer and asked why we weren't regular pioneering and why we didn't have enough faith in Jehovah, because we were only doing 60 hours free voluntary service each month, and not the whatever it was, 70,
So
80,
greedy.
whatever. Yeah, exactly. I think it might have been 90 or something crazy back then, like the
Yeah,
pioneer hours. But yeah, it was that there's never any praise for what you do.
never
It's
enough.
that I think there's a passage in the Bible, isn't there, that says you've only done what you ought to have done. Um, and that very much is the attitude, isn't it? So you can give absolutely everything, all of your time, all of your resources, and you're only doing what you should be doing. It's still not enough. There's always a level you can
Yeah, don't
get to.
celebrate that. You're
Yeah.
only doing what you should have done anyways.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah.
no great reason for rejoicing. Just,
No.
pummel your
Yeah.
body and lead it as a slave, as they would
Absolutely.
say, and
Yeah.
do more. What do you
Yeah.
do?
Always more. It's never enough. So then you're there with super low self-esteem, or I was anyway. So I had super low self-esteem from absolutely everything that was happening in my life, up until that point, and then was being told I wasn't good enough, even when I was trying to do my best, and doing far too much for what I could cope with mentally at the time. And yeah, I just remember I hated the ministry so much, and it was so painful to have to do like full days, um, knocking door to door. I would have all my little tricks for kind of avoiding getting return visits or avoiding getting a Bible study. And because I just couldn't deal with it, I didn't want one. And I used to remember on the meeting, they'd be like, pray for a Bible study, and everybody would be desperate to get a Bible study. And I always used to think, I can't think of anything worse. Like, I really don't want a Bible study at all. And then I used to feel really guilty for thinking that I was the only person that was actively not praying for a Bible
Oh, you
study.
were definitely not the only person, Felicity. I hated those talks, and I was like, I don't want a Bible study. I
Don't
want to
want
be
that.
left
No.
alone.
Yeah, just leave
I'm
me
tired.
alone. Yeah, it was very much like that. You're so exhausted, aren't you? And you don't want to do
Yes.
it. And they'd be saying, here's the blessings of having a Bible study, and you have to associate with them outside of it as well, and you need to really take them under your wing. And I just used to think, I can't think of anything worse.
I can
I
barely
don't have
pay
the
my
energy.
bills and eat and
Yeah.
do all the stuff that you're making me do, and now you want me to give
And
more?
yeah, Yeah,
Can't
I
do
just,
that.
it was
No, I think a lot
beyond
of people
me.
have the same feelings.
Yeah. Yeah, but again, it's just another thing you feel bad about, don't you? And you think, well, why don't I
Yeah.
feel this way? Why don't I want one?
Yeah, clearly
But
I don't
yeah,
love Jehovah enough.
no, that's the bottom line,
I'm
isn't it? You
bad.
don't, yeah, you don't love Jehovah enough. But it's weird saying about praying as well, because I've never really prayed, which is quite an odd concept for an ex-Jehovah's Witness. I used to have all the public prayers, the ones that everyone else would say. But even as a child, I remember trying. So I'd give it a go. I'd lie in my bed and usually I'd fall asleep immediately because I was tired. But I just remember feeling like there's no one there. What am I doing? I'm basically talking to myself in my head. Um, and yeah, felt like that the whole way along, really. So in the end, I kind of just didn't do it. And then that's again something I'd feel really, really bad about. Especially when people would say, if something had happened or you were stressed or upset about something, the first thing would be, are you praying? Have you prayed about this? And I'd just be like, yeah, I've prayed about it, but no, could never pray. I think there's something in my brain or in my like worldview or something that just knew deep down that that was a pointless exercise. Yeah.
No, I get it. I mean, I gave prayers from the
Mm.
stage in front of hundreds of people at times, and I never. I mean, it was a performative thing that I had to
Yes.
do. It wasn't
Yeah.
any real connection there, and even in the
Mm.
times where I guess I really did feel it. I mean, raise your hands in the YouTube comments if you ever fell asleep during prayer. I would, I'd lay, my head down at night. It's like, you're supposed to pray before you go to sleep. I'd start to
Yeah.
try to pray. I fell asleep all the time. And then I feel
Yeah.
guilty and beat myself up because I'm a terrible person. How could I
Yeah.
possibly have
Yeah.
felt? No, it was basically just meditation. And that's what I
Yeah.
was doing. I was thinking
Yeah.
deeply about things and then
And then
off
you
to
were
sleep I would drift. That's all.
relaxing. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's right. That's all it is
it was
a
meditative.
meditation. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. I remember, and I think it was my my ex-husband used to like try and pray while he was sat on the toilet and used to feel really guilty about that, but that was the only kind of time that he had to to do it. And then was sort of like, is that wrong? Is that disrespectful? So there's all these funny, weird questions that it kind of would always bring up in your mind. Like, even with something like praying, it's like, am I doing this wrong all the time? It's,
Oh,
am I doing it
everything.
wrong?
Yes,
Yeah.
everything. Yes. There is nothing you cannot do wrong.
No,
That's
no,
what the
there's
Jehovah's
potential
Witness.
to do everything wrong. Yeah, all the
Yes.
time.
Yes. Uh, so how did you so you kind of mentioned that you got married. You also
Yeah,
mentioned trying to stave off, your own mental breakdown because you're trying to
yeah,
do too much,
yeah.
succumbing to that pressure. So how did things progress for you? I mean, there's a
Mm.
how did you or did you have a breakdown? I don't know. But, how did you
Um,
make your way
yeah, so
through
I
that?
I think I didn't ever have like a breakdown where I came to a halt or anything like that. I think I had periods of time where I was very depressed. I had an eating disorder as well, all the way through my teens and in my early 20s, which was just a reaction to everything. I think
Mhm.
all the pressure. Also, mum was always very specific about what I looked like. I was a lot lighter than I am now when I was a teenager, are most people.
Mhm.
But even then, she would make me stand in front of her and she'd critique everything and say what was wrong with me, and I needed to lose weight, or she'd make me have less on my plate. So it was very,
Abusive.
I guess, ingrained. Well, yeah, abusive. Yeah, it kind of led to an eating problem.
Sure.
And I think that's how it manifests itself really, is anxiety, PTSD, and an eating disorder at that age. Thankfully, I managed to recover from that specific thing. but yes, so that's kind of how it was. And I kind of ticked along, really being very shy, quiet, quite withdrawn. Um, Again, that stuff that mum would always highlight. So she'd come home from the meeting often and say, oh, sister so and so has said to me that she thinks that you're weird, or sister so and so said that you're too shy, or, you know, this sister was embarrassed because you did your talk on the platform and you didn't, you weren't outgoing enough, or whatever it was.
You stood
I
up
have,
for me, didn't you, Mom?
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Right?
No,
Right? No, I'm just
obviously
saying like
not.
that. She's telling you these things as though she's somehow doing
Yeah,
something good. Nah,
yeah,
Mom, why didn't you stand up for me? Why didn't you
yeah.
support me in any way? Because I
Mm,
mean, because she was just using this like the other
yeah,
things to get
yeah,
at you.
yeah, yeah. These things were probably never said, or maybe
Oh,
one
they may have
person.
been said. Jehovah's
Exactly,
Witnesses are
or
horrible like that.
someone was a bit bitchy and horrible and did say some of those things, which again is possible. But yeah, certainly you'd never pass them on to your child.
No.
But yeah, that was kind of the who I was as a late teen, really. And then I made friends with the person that I then married at 21. So again, he was from a big family. His dad was an elder, so they were very much in the center of the congregation. They also had quite a lot of, I guess, influence on things as well, because of that fact there were so many of them. They were like a family that had gone back, generations and generations, and that everybody knew somebody to do with the family. He has in later life discovered that he's autistic, so he had all that to deal with as a child. And Jehovah's Witnesses and neurodivergence is not something that tends to mix, really, because you're thinking outside the box in a different way, or not fitting in as you should fit in. And I think just anyway, a lot of people that I've met that have left are actually neurodivergent in some way. I think your brain just thinks differently, and sometimes that does you a favor and you see the cult for what it is, a bit more easily. I don't know what it is, but so he had that feeling of being a bit of a misfit within his family. So I think that's something we bonded over at the time. And we got on like a house on fire. We were really good friends as teenagers. And then that kind of led into trying to be in a relationship when we hit about 18, 19, but it was forbidden. His family decided they did not want him to have a relationship with me, I think because I was the child of a mentally ill single parent instead of, I don't know what it was, instead of an elder's daughter or whatever I should have been. Um, what followed was probably about a year or 18 months of real bullying um, from them, and from his brothers and sisters at times as well. I think his brothers and sisters were kind of just going along with what his parents were saying. And in later years, I got on very well with his brothers and sisters. I think, I mean, I remember getting hauled into the back room by his dad and told to not speak to him, that I had to leave him alone, that I mustn't, even be friends with him. It wasn't okay. I remember them getting elders to come, and we'd all have these horrible meetings where there'd be two elders and then, his parents and my mum, and they'd be trying to counsel us and saying, you can't have a relationship. And we'd be like, but we're like 18, 19. I know this is young, but this is Jehovah's Witnesses. Everybody,
Mhm.
gets married at that age. This isn't anything unusual. And they would say, no, we don't want this to happen. And then they would say things like, Jacob waited 7 years for Rachel or whatever it was, and that we had to wait. But it was all done in such a pressured and horrible way that it was such intense bullying, or that's how it felt. And we weren't allowed to speak to each other, but we were kind of at the time each other's only friends, I guess, or only thing that mattered to each other. So
Well,
it
they
was a
certainly
really
pushed you
horrible,
together.
yeah,
Like they
that's
pushed
the
you all
thing.
into a place
They
where all
did.
you could do was
Yeah,
defend each other.
yeah, exactly. So in by them kind of forbidding it, they made it happen.
Of
You know,
course.
had they just let us be friends, we might well have stayed friends, and any relationship fizzled out, and that was that. But that's not how Jehovah's Witnesses do things. You are not allowed to just date. You have to date only with a view to marrying someone. So right from the word go, you are thinking about marriage, which now I'm out of the Jehovah's Witnesses seems a mad thing to do, because especially at that age, you're still a child. You don't know anything about yourself. You don't know how to have a relationship with someone. That's, people who, aren't Jehovah's Witnesses, that's the time where they're dating all sorts of different people. They're finding out who they are, what works, what doesn't work, what their sexuality is, lots and lots of different things. But you don't have any of that as a Jehovah's Witness at all. It's basically your only option is to get married. To someone of the opposite sex, which works for some people in some cases, and for a lot of people doesn't work. So, kind of that was the situation. They ended up in the end when we were about 19 and a half ish, just accepting the situation. And then we ended up getting married when we were 21. Yeah, so it wasn't the smoothest of courtships, as they would call it.
Well, of course not. I mean, they
It was a horrible
have to
time.
be up in everybody's business all the time and control
Yeah,
everything that everyone does. And
yeah,
they set up every relationship for failure. There is
yeah.
no marriage inside Jehovah's Witnesses
No,
that's
there isn't.
been set up for
Nope.
success.
No, it's impossible. And you really see it when you come out of a marriage and you also come out of Jehovah's Witnesses, because, yeah, it's just made to fail, really. They are involved in every single aspect of your relationship and your marriage,
You can never
telling
even be
you what
alone. You
you
have to have a chaperone
exactly. We were
when you're
constantly
dating.
chaperoned. We couldn't talk to each other on our own, really. There were odd occasions where we'd be sat in another room or sort of away from people and get a chance to sort of talk and stuff. But yeah, everything was, you had to have people with you, you couldn't. So then you're going into a marriage and you've never been alone,
Yeah.
which is a bizarre concept.
Yes, it is.
And how can that possibly work? Because you don't know each other and you don't know what it's like to live with each other. You've not been able to live with each other beforehand or stay over together or anything like that. So
Probably
you
never
just have
even lived on
not.
your own.
No, I hadn't. I went straight from home, and he went straight from home to marriage. There was no in between. So neither of us had a clue, basically. And we're both, you know, messed up in our own way. And that,
Everyone
with
is.
the pressure of constant pressure, to be, for him especially, to be a ministerial servant and then be an elder, for us to be regular at all the meetings and everything. It was a lot of pressure. Yeah.
How did it feel for you? So getting married and leaving your mom's house.
Yeah.
I think that honestly, there's a lot of people that get married as young Jehovah's Witnesses to get out of abusive
Yes.
houses. They're
Yes.
trying to
Yeah.
to find freedom somehow. It doesn't matter how. I just got to
Yeah.
get out of here. Now,
Yeah.
sometimes they jump out of the frying pan and into the fire in some situations because there's a lot of domestic abuse and such
Yeah.
inside
A
of a
lot.
lot of
Yeah.
witness
Mm.
marriages. But
Yeah.
how did it feel for you to get out of that situation and to be in another? I mean, was that a lot of relief, I would assume?
Um,
Or did she follow you in, so to speak? Like, was she just as controlling in some way once you
I
were
think
married?
I think I so yes, there was I wasn't dealing with the day-to-day abuse anymore. But I think she came with me in the way that I kind of then had the enormous task of trying to recover from what had happened. But she was still in existence, so I'd still have to see her, the same congregation. We'd see her several times a week. And then there were times where we'd have to rush over because she'd been being awful to my brother then, and we'd have to, that times again, subsequent years where there was a period of 2 years where she was in a psychiatric facility for all that time. And then she would run away and try to, kill herself, and there would be the police involved. And she never went away. And I think that coupled with, I would say in the first few years of marriage, I was pretty unwell just from that stopping and a new circumstance starting.
Sure.
And everything that happened kind of catching up with me. So yeah, I would say I was pretty depressed, even though I was out of that situation. I think my husband at the time didn't know what to do with that. He was a boy, basically, 21, had no concept of anything like that, didn't know what to do,
Well, where would
couldn't
Jehovah's
emotionally.
Witnesses learn
Yeah,
emotional intelligence?
yeah,
That's
exactly.
you don't learn that.
Neither of us really had any. And I think he felt that he had got something. Again, women are often seen as possessions, really. Like we don't come to a marriage as a partnership, and that's just the general view. And I just think that he'd felt that whatever he had got was broken, and expressed that on several occasions. And I think, yeah, it was a messed up start in that regard, because neither of us knew what to do with such big emotions or things, that were happening. And I think I was trying to deal with it, and then yeah, he just sort of shut down, and continued to remain shut down. Then I think I would say for most of the time. I can understand why that was the case. It didn't mean that it didn't hurt me at the time, or was difficult to live with, but um, yeah, there was no, you're not allowed marriage counselling, you're not allowed any help, you're not allowed to tell, and you'd never have told anybody that, you know, there were problems with communicating, or whatever it was. Like, you just
Well,
have to
where were
put this
your
face
models
on.
for
Yeah,
healthy relationships? Where
yeah, because no one's got one as a Jehovah's Witness.
no.
Nobody's got one.
No, I mean, Jenny
Um,
and I, it's tough. I mean, I always talk about how we were just two kids from dysfunctional families
yeah,
that
yeah,
got together and then had to try to
yeah,
figure it out on our own with not only
yeah,
no help, but discouragement from help. And
yeah,
so
yeah,
again, the help just being pray about it or read a Watchtower magazine or the Bible.
yeah,
But nobody
yeah,
was helping us to understand each other. I had my
no,
narcissistic tendencies from the group and didn't
yeah,
I had no emotional intelligence.
yeah, yeah,
Coming from where I came from, there was just so much that
mm,
you start out these relationships so far behind the eight ball, and no one's taught you how to
yeah,
play pool, and you have to try
no,
to figure out how to engage with that game,
how
and
to, yeah,
it's and suffer as you do so
yeah,
together.
exactly, together, yeah. So you're going through this thing that's,
Try not to
should,
traumatize each other too
yeah,
bad.
yeah, exactly. And it's really hard, and sometimes, it goes really wrong.
True.
And yeah, because you can't speak about anything openly, things get sort of driven underground. And I think that's kind of what ended up happening with our marriage in the end, is that, yeah, he found an outlet with someone else. But then that was kept a secret for a long, 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 long time. And yeah, that's what happened. Like, I am sufficiently sort of, past the situation to not really, I have sympathy for what happened because there was no other way. It really, I mean, everyone always has a choice. I understand that, but I can see what happened to make him choose
So again, we
the
talked about
path he did.
coercion earlier, right? And
Yeah, yeah,
for Jehovah's Witnesses, there's there's only so many ways that are talked about. There's no, you're not supposed to divorce. You're not supposed to, because
no,
it's so
that's not an
messed up.
option.
Again,
Yeah,
don't have to have another relationship and not be telling somebody and things like that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but
yeah,
it's also it's so messy, and I'm sorry again that you
mm,
had to go through that. Um,
yeah. So it was a
there's
shock. I
no,
always knew there was something wrong because I could sense that there was something very wrong. Um, but again, didn't know what it was, couldn't really ask. Um, and you're just encouraged to get on with it. You're not encouraged to bring it to anybody or have concerns. You have to, both of you, grit your teeth and get on with marriage, because that's the only option. You can't divorce, you can't separate. There's nothing that can happen. So you just kind of, I think, I mean, it was 14 years that he was, having an affair, I guess, with someone else. And I knew something was wrong, but could not put my finger on it properly. Again, because you kind of never think that that's going to be the thing it is, because, as a Jehovah's Witness, that's a terrible thing to do. And
and
there's
as a non-Jehovah's Witness,
well, exactly,
not a great thing to
it's
do.
not it's not a great thing to do. But I think if you're not a Jehovah's Witness, you probably more quickly could talk about it. So
Yes,
you
yes.
could, you'd
You
meet
have other
somebody who's,
options to handle that
yeah,
situation,
yeah,
or maybe
maybe
before that
within,
situation even ever
yeah,
arises.
yeah. And you could end a marriage or a relationship. Yes,
Right.
that's still messy, that's still hurtful,
Sure.
that's still horrible, but you have other options. I'm not saying everyone takes them. Some people just go with the secrecy and they're not wanting to upset, a marriage. But as a Jehovah's Witness, there are no options.
No, and you
So
said something earlier, so we were recording the back room part
mm,
of this, the recording for the Patreon subscribers.
mm,
Um, and you gave an example and said that there was a woman at a poignant moment who said, "It's
mm,
not you, it's her," about you,
yeah,
in observance of you and your mom when your mom
yeah,
walked away, and said, "It's
yeah,
not you, it's her." And
yeah,
again, in that situation, the marital situation, again, we tend to blame ourselves. What didn't I do
mm,
right? How was I somehow insufficient?
yeah,
But it's not all about you. It's not at
no,
all. And
no,
it can, it's not something that you have to walk around with the blame for. Um,
no. I think I guess looking at it objectively, it's just a mixture of a very unique and horrible set of circumstances that
yep.
we were brought up with. But that doesn't take away, and I'm sure he would also accept this, that doesn't take away from a horrible choice. Like in itself, that was that was not a great thing to do.
Nope.
And I'm sure he would accept that as well. There, yeah. So it was still a crappy thing to do for sure.
Oh,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah,
100%. That's not okay.
yeah,
And that's
yeah,
the whole thing about, a lot of healing from our experiences with Jehovah's Witnesses is really not being black and white, but trying to be able to hold two separate things. And one
yeah,
being my feelings about the
yeah,
situation and the person and what they did to me, but also
yeah,
trying to temper it or have some acceptance of the circumstances that we were all in and how we were
yeah,
all set up in so many
yeah,
ways for failure. And then
Yeah.
also, our apologies offered and our people changing
Mm.
who they are and, lots of things as people move forward.
Add into it. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. I think, yeah, it doesn't detract from the fact that
It still hurts and
something,
it's still crappy.
yeah, it does. I felt coming out of, he told me one day that this had been going on and then left. Yeah, and my whole world turned upside down. That was, I felt that all those years of marriage, we'd been almost married for 20 years at that point, I'd wasted my life, that it was a waste of time. Certainly the 14 years where he was also with someone else, I just felt what a waste. But then I told myself, I have two beautiful children that have come out of this, and that's not a waste at all. So, you know, good things happened as well, and I would never take that back. But I think it did. It turned everything upside down for me. Yeah.
Again, it's holding both sides of that equation, which
Yeah.
is so hard to do as human beings. I mean, I wasted 38 years in a cult, or well, 30,
Yeah.
from 8 to
Yeah.
38, and I
Yeah.
can look back at that and say, "Oh, what a waste." But at the same time, I get to do what I'm doing right now with you. I've
Yeah.
met so many wonderful people. I get to coach people and help. I've got an experience and I can use it in helping others, but I'm also able to see things today that a lot of people don't see. I see a lot of
Yeah.
manipulation and propaganda and coercion in so many
Yeah.
areas of the world today that I
Yeah.
don't think a lot of people see. And it's a
Yeah.
protection for me today, whereas I see a lot of people going down
Yeah.
paths that are not super healthy. But
Yeah.
so but also there's a lot of lost time there and an opportunity
Yeah.
cost that I can't get back.
Yeah.
So it's just about
Yeah.
making the most of what you got
I
today
think
and
I
learning the
think so.
lessons.
There are always not benefits to come out of these things, but I think there are things that, yeah, for example, having a traumatic childhood has made me much more able to read people straight away, which is probably not a great thing because that means I'm very overly hyper vigilant, which is not good, but also it's helpful. Because I can walk into a room and I know what everyone's feeling, which is helpful. I found that really helpful a lot of the time, in many situations. And it's just stuff like that, really, isn't it? Like, as you've just said, we know how to spot things that are a bit culty, things that are not safe or might be a bad idea for people. Yeah, so
And we can
trauma and
become,
horrible
like
things bring
anything.
good things.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like anything, it has to be a balance, right? We can get to a point where we now give no one and nothing a chance because we
Mm.
just judge everything, like
Yeah.
everything feels unsafe because of where we came
Yeah.
from.
Yeah.
Or, people today will often talk about being an empath, which I personally am not a big believer in. I think that that's
No,
just
it's
a byproduct of
hypervigilance. Yeah.
abuse.
Yeah.
And I mean, again, feeling people's feelings can be a good thing, but
Yeah.
if we think that we know better than everybody else what
Yeah.
everybody's feeling,
Yeah.
now we're like
That's
getting into
not good.
magical thinking territory.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's not great either, right? So it's trying to have
Yeah.
boundaries with
Yeah.
everything. Empathy is a
Yeah.
beautiful quality. Empathy unchecked means you can't
Yeah.
go out into the world because you feel everything. You're just an
Yeah.
open wound, and that means you're not
Yeah.
healed. So
Yes.
there's a
Yeah,
lot
for
of
sure.
a lot of balance to be found there. But again, you've been through a lot, and so your husband has revealed where he is. He has left. You're
Yeah.
still one of Jehovah's Witnesses at that time.
Yeah.
So how do we get to a point where you're talking to me? how do
Yeah.
how do we get to a point where you start waking up and seeing the realities
Yeah.
of all of this?
So I have always struggled with certain things, and felt really bad about them. So I just I was never good with anything that was judgmental, which is most of it really. So,
everything of being a witness
which is
is.
pretty much everything. So I
Yes.
was always a really poor Jehovah's Witness. Um, in fact, actually, that's funny that someone, while I was still a Jehovah's Witness, people used to be quite amazed, people at work, that I was one, just because I was not judgmental of things, and I was always quite chill and like accepting. And then after I left, they said, "You were a really, really rubbish Jehovah's Witness." I was like, "Yeah, I know.
You're doing it wrong.
I was
Damn you
really
and your
doing it wrong."
empathy.
Yeah, too much empathy, I think. But yeah, so I always felt really uncomfortable. So I never understood, or, I would have to squash down a lot of stuff. So whenever anyone was saying anything that was like anti-gay, for example, I would find that very difficult. And I'd have to actively like talk myself into reasoning through why they were saying it and why that was okay. I mean, obviously it's not at all, but
Right.
it's that cognitive dissonance, isn't it, where you're trying to squash down your real feelings and replace them with what you get told. I always had a problem with the killing of innocent people at Armageddon, that not everybody would get to know the message, and what would happen with them. And just things
Even
like that,
children.
really. Children, exactly. The children that you send your children to school with, um, they would all die, but my children would be okay. How does that work? Like, that's not. So basically, as time went on, those feelings just would not go away. I was also, I've always been a very strong feminist, so which is not a great thing to be as a Jehovah's Witness. So all of that
They
side
are
of
not
things was
feminists.
hard. Yeah,
Uh,
no. So anytime, you'd get told that your husband is the head of the household, you just have to be in submission, you have to keep quiet,
you're
you're
the
not allowed to
weaker
have a say
vessel.
in things, you're the weaker vessel, yeah. Or say when the circuit overseer was visiting and we'd maybe have like tea and cake after the ministry, um, the brothers would all stand around eating cake, and it would be the sisters that were serving, the sisters that were cleaning up, and I just used to get so annoyed and feel like saying to the brothers, "Well, you could help clean up. You've just eaten all the cake. Like, there's been none left for us because we've been too busy serving everyone. Like, why can't you help us clean up?" But no, that was a sister's thing to do. It was very limited. And it was, only recently sisters are now allowed to wear trousers, to a meeting or on the ministry. So it's all just very, women were second class citizens, really, which again, in turn, fostered a lot of abuse for people, and a lot of really bad treatment. Um, just, people wouldn't be believed. And I remember once I had one of the field service carts, because you do your own version, but I had one
Yeah,
of
I'm
them
aware.
in my car. Yeah, you know all about that. So I had one of them in my car and I had to return it, but I couldn't get into the Kingdom Hall. So I remembered that the other congregation that shared our Kingdom Hall had their meeting on. So I thought, great, I'm just gonna, where the carts were stored was just in the porch. So no one had seen me. I was just going to pop in and pop it in the cupboard. So I went in there and did it. This was on a evening, so it was pretty dark. Everyone was in the Kingdom Hall having their meeting, except one guy who was being the attendant outside in the foyer. Um, I was putting the cart away, and all of a sudden, this guy who was huge just came at me basically and just wrapped his arms around me, but then molested me basically, like felt me in areas I was not happy with, because nobody was around. So I went home and felt really horribly uncomfortable about that. And I remember bringing it up, um, with an elder at a later date and being told, that brother was just quite friendly, and I'd misread everything. And as a sister, I really had to be careful about these things. And again, it was my fault because I was a woman, basically.
You're always the Jezebel, right? Like you're
Yeah,
always
yeah.
the temptress, the
Something I
yeah.
must have done must have made him do that. Um, and it was dismissed immediately. So nothing ever got said. I didn't push it any further because at the time I was just like, okay. But that's the sort of world that women live in Jehovah's Witnesses, and much worse than that, much
Oh,
worse.
absolutely. Uh,
Mm.
yeah, the
So
stories
all of
can be
that,
much worse.
yeah, much, much worse. I know of examples where people, have been raped by their husbands and
Mhm.
all sorts of terrible, terrible things. But yeah, so all of that was kind of building up in my head. And then COVID hit, and we all got a break from the meetings and the ministry. We didn't have to do the ministry really. I mean, you could write letters, but I mean, you could do that, in your house drinking coffee. It was great. No one was watching or checking up on you. um, all the pressure was lifted. I mean, obviously you still had to appear on Zoom, and that had to be done in a very specific way. So then there was a lot of judgment about people that didn't turn their cameras on, people that were kind of obviously on the sofa with their blankets and their comfy things, or people who, like, I used to drink a cup of tea sometimes if it was early on a Sunday morning. And let's face it, a lot of us at that time just kind of rolled out of bed and switched on the computer and then started the meeting, and then had a coffee or a cup of tea or whatever, at the same time. And there was a lot of judgment about those sorts of things that went on. So you still had to make sure you did it right. Um,
No, you got to
but loads
control
of,
you in your own house if they can.
yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah. And some people, there was a whole thing I seem to remember about whether you had to still stand up for the song and the prayer, in your own house. And so half the people would stay sat down, and then half the people you'd unfortunately just have shots of like their crotch or like a
I was
really
gonna say it's got
awful
to be crotch
area.
shots because everybody's
It was.
camera's
It
low.
was really bad. It was
I was
horrible.
gone before that, so I missed the whole Zoom debacle.
Oh,
But
there were
that's
some funny things that
insane.
happened. Yeah, there were some really funny things.
Oh
Or you get
gosh.
people that hadn't turned off their microphones, and then they'd be saying stuff to each other, and yeah. So there was some fun to be had as well. But it I think that lifted the pressure off, and it gave me personally time and space to think, um, and the relief that I wasn't having to do it anymore. And that's when I opened up YouTube one day and, watched an apostate video. Yeah, and I remember feeling horrific about it, like I'd
Mhm.
done a terrible, terrible thing. Um, but every single thing, it was an interview with someone I think who had left Bethel and been disfellowshipped. Every single thing that they said was what I thought, and it really resonated with me. Um, and I thought, oh my goodness, other people think this too. Um, what if they're right? And what if that's right? And then that started over those few years of COVID. I just watched and read everything I could, from people such as yourself and other people that are, available, who had websites or YouTube channels or whatever it was. I read things like the official criteria of what makes a cult. And every single thing on it was, I couldn't deny that that was what it was. So by the time my husband left, I had already gone in my head. Um, yeah, so I was already at that stage where I knew it was not something that I kind of wanted to be part of anymore, but I had no idea how to go about doing it. But then when he left, it was almost like, okay, now it's just me. Um, and I have the freedom, because obviously up until that point, my ex-husband had been an elder. He was secretary of our congregation for a long time. So it wasn't something that I did not know how to get out of that situation, being an elder's wife and having children, and everyone, both of our families, in our congregation. It was too big a thing for me to do anything about, I felt. But then him leaving, and then I was the head of my house, so to speak. Like, I was the one that then was in charge of my children and what we did with our lives. So yeah, that started down a road of probably about a year where I was thinking, okay, I need to work out what I'm going to do. It also, the congregation at the time kind of soft shunned me anyway. I think because what had happened with my husband leaving was such a huge deal, that there was quite a lot of gossip and people thinking that I must have had something to do with it as
Isn't that
well, like that
interesting?
I'd done
Again,
something wrong. Yeah,
the woman could never, like,
you can never be innocent. Like,
it's
it's all
you.
your
It
fault.
must have been you somehow,
Yeah, yeah, for
because he was
sure.
an elder.
Yeah, that's right. He was an elder, and had I'd committed two terrible sins. One of which was going back to work and having a secular job, which was several. I'd had several people say that they thought that wasn't a great idea, and had also a couple of people approach me and say that they were worried that I was associating with my workmates outside of work. I think I'd gone for a coffee, like, with one of them and got seen, or something like that. And this then turned into a thing in the congregation that I had worldly friends. And then the second thing that I did that was terribly wrong was look slightly differently to what I should have looked like as a sister. So I did not look like I do now. So, for example, now I've got like an undercut, I've got a nose piercing. But even back then, I had quite a lot of ear piercings, which were frowned on. I kind of dressed on the slightly more gothy side of things, even though it wasn't anywhere near the way that I present myself now. Um, but it was still not okay. So I wasn't performing being a sister as I should have been. I was a bit of a outcast, I guess, sort of skirting on the edges of
Well, I mean,
things.
if they're worried about
Yeah,
your spiritual health, clearly the only thing they could possibly do is shun you. There's no
yeah,
way that they could offer help or rally around you. Shunning is the way. We
that's the way.
know that's
Yeah.
proven to
So I got a
help
couple of
people.
weeks of help. Not like big help, but I think I don't think I even had a shepherding call at that time by the elders. I think that came much later when they realised that I was doing terrible things, that like not going to the meetings and stuff. At the time when I probably could have done with a bit of help and support, there was none there. I had a friend who I miss dearly still, who was amazing to me. And she was great, but she was having to fight battles on my behalf. I remember we would go to lunch or have a coffee together, and she'd say, she would call herself my PR agent at times and say, look, I'm trying my best here. I'm giving you good PR. I'm telling people, that who you are really, and that, this isn't the case. But she said, she's fighting a losing battle sometimes,
Because they'd
which
rather
was really
talk
sad.
about you than
Oh,
talk
of
to
course.
you. That's the witness
Yeah.
way. I'll talk
Yeah,
about
for
you,
sure.
but I'm not going
Yeah.
to talk to you.
Yeah. So then we also had a huge situation in the congregation where my ex-husband's family were in that congregation still. And of course it was, my ex-husband leaving and then leaving Jehovah's Witnesses, obviously being disfellowship, was a huge thing for them. Very upsetting. I get that. It's a huge deal. But then it suited them for these rumors to be being spread, because then it kind of took the heat off him a little bit. And obviously, I get it. As as a mum, you don't want to think that, in terms of Jehovah's Witnesses, your son has done like a really terrible thing. So therefore, if you can blame it on the other person as well, and that's going to make you feel a little bit better. So I think that's a combination of all of those things happened at the time, and it led to, yeah, me being soft shunned. I felt like I had done something wrong as well. And at a time where I most needed some help and support, there was none at all. No.
But yeah, there's just no real love there at
No,
all. It's
no.
you said it earlier, judgment. That's what it is. Judgment and
Yeah,
control is the best you can hope for.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. It was completely, it's always completely conditional. So there is no unconditional love in Jehovah's Witnesses at all. Um, People only show you love if you are doing the right things, or in their opinion are doing the right things. Yeah, that's just how it is. Which is funny because then when I left and I got all these terrible worldly people became my friends, that's when I actually saw evidence of genuine like love and help from people who had no motive to help me at all, other than that they were just really lovely people and they wanted to do it. You don't see that in Jehovah's Witnesses at all.
yeah, with the witnesses, you have to earn everything,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
With
for
with
sure.
the world around us, people can just like you because you're you, and they can just help
Yeah,
because they're cool people. They're
because
not
they're
doing
nice
it because
people.
they're trying to
Yeah,
earn street cred with Jehovah or something.
no,
They're just doing it
no.
because they're nice.
Yeah, I think there's a great quote, and I can't remember who said it, and I'm also not going to attempt to say it word for word either. But it's basically that who's the better person, an atheist who does something just off their own back because they don't have a God who's trying to make them do it, or someone who does a kind thing only because they're being forced to do it by some, person in the sky. It's who's the better person. And of course, it's always going to be the one, isn't it, that's doing it because they want to do it for, because they're a nice person, rather than the one that's getting forced into doing it. So, yeah,
Yeah,
it was,
it's kind of the old. Oh, I don't know if you've ever listened to Bo Burnham or not, but he's got a song. Maybe I'll link it in the comments below,
mm,
but it's basically uh God talking to humans and being um I told you guys not to rape. I didn't think I had to say that though. Like I
yeah,
figured you guys could figure that out on your
just
own. And
work that one
also
out.
like
Yeah.
I don't know why you think that I want you to come up here. Like I know you guys want to kick it with me, but why do you think I'd ever want to kick it with you? And it's just this, it's kind of a funny song from a God's
Yeah.
perspective. Who's like, hey, I made you guys, I gave you all cool things. I don't know what
Yeah.
y'all are doing, but I also don't know why you think I want to be with you. Um, it's kind of a funny thing, but yeah, you don't have to, you can just be a good person. And of course, there's religious people who are good
Yeah.
people too,
Yeah,
right?
of
And they're not
course. Yeah,
just
absolutely.
them,
No, no, no. There are
but
some really lovely people. Yeah.
right. But like, yeah, you don't, Jehovah's Witnesses, they're just looking to be told by somebody what's right and what's wrong to do.
Yeah.
They're not really
Yeah.
exercising their own mind and their own heart. They gave
No.
up those things a long time ago. And
Mm.
so when you need help, Jehovah's Witnesses tend to shoot their wounded instead of helping them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
they're done with you because you're a
Yeah.
problem now and they don't want to invest time
Yeah.
into fixing you.
Yeah. That's right. I mean, I did, as you say, there are some really kind people, and there were some examples. For example, my brother came over at the time. He lives in Bethel in South Korea, and he came over, and a couple that he was friends with in Bethel sent me a month's rent. Um, they didn't have much money, but they sent that along. So I don't ever want to take away from those things because, yes, on the whole, people were awful and shunned me and behaved badly, but there are some kind people in Jehovah's Witnesses who kind of are brainwashed but still have some empathy and are trying to, or they think they're doing it for the right reason. And some kind things happen,
Yeah, you still
people.
see
That
that
was
humanity
a lovely thing to do. Yeah,
until their
yeah,
indoctrination gets in the way at some
yeah,
point, which is the
for
sad thing
sure.
because
Yeah,
there's potential good humaning there,
yeah,
but it can
yeah,
only
there
go
is.
so
Yeah,
far.
yeah, exactly. Because then obviously, now, for example, those people wouldn't speak to me if they saw me in the street, so it only goes so far ever, the kindness. Um, yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
yes,
how
that's
did you end up
yeah.
leaving officially, or what was the end of that for you?
So I stopped attending any meetings, probably about 9 months before I was disfellowshipped. I My brother was due to visit that summer, and I wanted to see him like for one last time. We'd always been very, very close, me and my brother, even though he's always lived out of the country for most of his adult life, really. And I just wanted that last time of seeing him. Looking back, I'm not sure that was the greatest idea. I think it was I just felt intense discomfort with him being there. I think he picked up on something being very wrong also, and it wasn't the sort of nice time that it could have been. Also, after I'd stopped attending meetings, my daughter, who was 13, came out as gay, and she, I felt amazing that she was able to tell me, and that she was able to live her life as she wanted to. And it really I remember saying to her when she told me, I said, this is why I'm doing what I'm doing. This is why we're leaving, because I want you to choose who you are in life, and choose the way you want to live. Um, and that's why I'm doing it, so that you and your brother have this chance. You get to grow up, hopefully, without the guilt, without the shame, without having to hide who you are. Um, and that was like an enormous thing as well, that really spurred me on to just get on with it. So the elders started cottoning on to something being wrong. So I had them knocking on my door a lot, trying to find me, asking me where I was. I'd You could always tell if I'd been being talked to, or being talked about rather, at a meeting, because then I'd suddenly get a couple of texts from people that would say, "Where are you? You need to come back to the meeting," or "Do you want to work with me in the ministry?" And I always used to think, "No, I don't." It was such an odd thing. Like, I sometimes, at one point, I'd not been to the meetings for 6 months, and so you'd get a random text from someone saying, "Oh, do you want to come into the ministry with me?" And I'd be like, how is that the thing to say to someone first? Like, if they'd said, "Do you want to go out for a coffee?" you might think, well, no, that would be quite nice, because you actually might care about how I am. But there's always a condition to it. So it's, I will have coffee with you, but only if you are in the field service first, doing the thing you should be doing, and then I'll give you my time. And by that point, I could see everything for exactly what it was. So my brother visited, um, and and then he went back to Korea. Um, by this time, that was the beginning of August of last year. And then I was like, right, okay, I need to do this. And I thought long and hard about whether I would just disassociate myself or get disfellowshipped. And I went back and forth on this. And I thought, no, for me, it felt better to be disfellowshipped. I felt that I wanted, although it would be a really intense and unpleasant experience, I wanted to kind of have my say in front of some elders, and just tell them why I was doing this. So I had a friend, a male friend at the time, who said to me, he was a bit of a friend with benefits situation at the time. And I used that to trigger a judicial committee. And so, yes, everything went into overdrive then. And, I think I had 2 meetings with elders where I had to tell them what had happened before I even got to the judicial committee. And they had to ask all these sometimes quite odd questions and sometimes incredibly intrusive questions, which I refused to answer because I had decided I was not going to talk about what happened. It was irrelevant, but that I would just confirm that sin had happened. But my main purpose of having a judicial committee was to sort of stand up for myself, I guess, and tell them why I wanted to leave. So got to the judicial committee, 3 elders. I was in there for a good few hours, and kind of the the sin of fornication or whatever it was kind of that was gone. I said no, I confirm that's happened, and they were like, "Are you sorry about it?" I was like, "No." Would you do it again? Yes. And then so that was out the way. That was within minutes really that happened. And then we had this huge talk about, basically, I think they were trying to see how much of an apostate I was at that point. And we had this huge discussion for a long time. And I decided that I wasn't going to go over lots of points, but I wanted to argue 1 or 2 things well. So I picked the main reason why I was actually leaving, which was that, in all honesty, I couldn't live in a paradise that was, number one, my children wouldn't be there because, one of them just come out as gay. The other one decided he didn't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore either. They wouldn't be there. In Jehovah's Witness world, that wouldn't be the case. And I said, I can't be somewhere without my children. That is abhorrent to me. I cannot imagine a world where I had come through something and they were dead. I also then argued off the back of that I also, in all conscience, couldn't be in a world where, 6 billion or whatever, however many people there are on the planet, innocent people were dead. I think I remember saying, which was a little bit strong, but also very true, that to me, the paradise seemed like the worst dystopian nightmare I could possibly think of. Which obviously, took them aback. So they argued, the main elder, that was the one that was the head of the judicial committee, argued at length and was saying, but God is a God of love, Jehovah's a loving God, we just don't know. And I was arguing back and quoting watchtowers and saying, but this watchtower says if you're not a baptized Jehovah's Witness, you're going to die at Armageddon, says it very clearly. And he said, well, we just don't know. And at one point he said, I prefer to believe that Jehovah is a God of love. And I said to him, but you then are believing something that directly contradicts what the governing body say. Are you saying the governing body are wrong? And then, of course, he panicked and was like, no, I'm not saying that at all. Like, oh my goodness, in case he accidentally said something that was apostate.
Yeah,
I
you see,
backed him into a corner.
he's believing what he wants to believe, what tickles his ears, so to
Yeah.
speak, what makes him
Yeah.
feel good, and he's not listening to what's really being said. He's trying to make
No.
it fit what he wants to be true, especially
Yeah.
in that moment as you're pinning
Yeah.
his ears to the wall. And
Yeah.
I mean, you
Yeah.
were right. That's exactly what they say.
Yeah, that's right. And it's all these little things that when you are a Jehovah's Witness, you tell yourself and it kind of gets you through.
Sure.
Like when that thought hits you that everybody is going to die, you're like, oh, but Jehovah's a God of love. He wouldn't do, he's going to judge and it's up to him and he'll read people's hearts and all this actual rubbish that they don't teach, Because if you actually read or watch a broadcast or whatever it is from directly from the governing body, they teach something very different, which is no, if you're not a baptized Jehovah's Witness, you will not get through Armageddon. That is the bottom line. So they can't have it both ways. And that's what I said to them. So in the end, they saw that I was a lost cause, and that there was no way that we were coming back from this. So I went outside to wait, and I remember I waited for about 20 minutes, half an hour, because of course you have a judicial committee in the evening usually, and it's 3 men, and they lock the door behind you in an empty Kingdom Hall. And that in itself is terrifying. As a woman, especially, that's very intimidating. I had a friend, she came with me and waited in the car park because she was I had other friends on call. They were like, we're just around the corner and we will come if you ring
Oh,
us and you need us, which was so lovely of them,
yeah.
because it's a hugely intimidating situation. You're going to be judged on your own in a locked Kingdom Hall by 3 men. It's horrible. Um, and also what I also think is an interesting point is they are judging your life or death. So that that's not the case. By this point, I knew by this point that absolutely that was Armageddon wasn't coming, and nothing, anything like that. But they don't know that, so they are literally sentencing you to death at that point, and they know it as well. So
Mhm.
it's a huge,
And they're okay
hugely
with that.
intimidating thing, and they're okay with it. Yeah, they're okay with it. So it took them 20 minutes, half an hour to talk about it. And I got called back in, and then I was disfellowshipped, on the grounds of fornication and apostasy. So, yay.
Are
So
you,
that was
can
that.
I ask?
Yeah.
So, because I can already, like, I know how people feel about this stuff. So I see this all the time, well, you didn't have to go in there and see those brothers. You gave them power, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
There's going to be people who are going to project their
Yeah.
feelings about it onto
Yeah.
you. But
Mm,
are you ultimately, at the end of the day, are you happy about the fact that you went in there and that
yeah.
you took a stand for yourself?
Yeah. I like to stand up for things. Um, and I like to stand up for things like injustice and things that I think are wrong. Um, so for me personally, I mean, I could have just written them a letter and not have gone through that. So while I complain about it being a scary experience, I put myself in that position. I absolutely get that. Um, but for myself, I needed to have that closure of me telling them what was wrong and what I thought, um, and backing them into a bit of a corner. And I just felt I needed that. I needed to tell someone that it was not okay. And that's why I was leaving. I didn't want, to leave for any other reason, really. And I wanted to make it very clear, and I wanted to use my voice to do that. So that was why I did what I did. Yeah.
Good for
Um,
you. That's awesome. I think that, everybody should leave the way that they feel that they need to
yeah.
leave. It's one of the more
Yeah.
personal things you're gonna do. And that's why I
Absolutely.
just wanted to
Yeah.
ask that question because
Yeah.
I see ex-Jehovah's Witnesses judging each other on how they leave all the
Yeah.
time. Certain parts of
Yeah.
the witness experience die hard. And at the end of the day, if this is how you found peace by going in there and doing that, I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's so awesome because for a lot of
Mm,
ex-witnesses, that moment, like I disassociated, that
yeah.
moment is one of the first times in your life that you're saying,
Mm,
no, 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 no. I
mm,
tell you how this goes. I'm going to
yeah.
tell you what this is.
Yeah.
And I'm going to live in emotional and mental honesty for maybe the
Yeah.
first time in my
Yeah.
life out
Ever.
loud.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah. It felt good. Um, the whole process didn't feel good, in
Of
that
course.
leaving was like, again, was probably it took a real toll on me mentally. I was I didn't have a breakdown or anything like that, but I felt exhausted, mentally drained. I found things hard for a while. And then you've got all the grief, haven't you? Because what follows is the shunning. And no one can prepare you for that. You know it's going to happen. And you think you'll deal with it and it will be sad, but you'll deal with it. But when it comes to it, and your family or my brother or my best friend or whoever are actually shunning you and have chosen Jehovah's Witnesses over you, that makes you, I fully went into a grieving process about that, and I think still am in that. I do have grief about it still, and I think probably that will gradually ease, but that's
Well,
all will be
grief is
something
a
that will always be painful. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, grief is you lose someone that you love in death, and
yeah,
that grief will always be a part of you. Those people
yeah,
will always be a part
yeah,
of you, and it's the same. I mean, grief is a process. It's not
mm,
it's linear that you do once and that's done.
yeah,
It's it's a part of you, and you know, I try to explain it to people sometimes on the outside who have a hard time understanding it. And it's like everybody was on a bus, everyone
yeah,
and care about, and that bus went off a cliff.
yeah,
And then you
yeah,
go to the scene of the accident and you look, and they're not dead. They're all just
mm,
down there, like on the beach at the bottom of the
yeah,
cliff, like having a good
yeah.
time. And they've just decided to live
They
their lives there.
don't
They're
want
not
to be
really
with you.
interested in being
Yeah,
saved or coming out to see you again. They're
yeah,
okay without you. And that's
yeah.
just a weird feeling.
It's weird. It is, because it's not like someone's died. They've chosen that. I know they frame it a different way to themselves. So they like to make out that it's something you have chosen to do.
Yeah,
But
they're the victim of you.
they're
You
the victim
left
of me.
them.
Yeah, exactly. But I wrote the closest people to me um, a letter before I left, just explaining why I was doing what I was doing. But I made it very clear that I was still here. I was still the same person. Um, I was not going anywhere, really. I'd just chosen to believe something different from what they did. But if they would, my house was open to them still. My friendship was still here. I was still, my brother's sister. That was not ever going to change from this end. And I just had to say that to them, because I know the thinking where it's like they think I have chosen to leave them. Not at all. I just wanted to say I'm still here in the same place as I always am. That's not going to change. So therefore, they have chosen um, to shun.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, that's the bottom line. Really, it's literally everybody you've ever known and loved since I was 8 years old, is now gone, which
Yeah.
is a big deal when you think about it like
Yeah,
that.
your roots are gone.
Yeah, all of my roots. So don't get me wrong, I have some amazing friends now, but everybody that knows me now has only known me for a couple of years. Um, I don't have any history with anyone. I don't have, that kind of, oh, do you remember when, when we were 10, we did this, or it's gone. All of my history is gone. Which, yeah, is a lot to get your head around, I think, sometimes. And then also when things crop up in life, it kind of brings it home even more. Like I have recently been diagnosed with stage 2 breast cancer. I am facing chemotherapy, surgery, radiotherapy, more chemotherapy. It's going to be a hard year. And I sent a text to both my mum and my brother to just tell them that, because I wanted them to know from a health perspective that this was, in the family, and that they should check themselves. Obviously, it happens to men as well as women.
Mhm.
Um, And my brother texted me back with one line that just said, "Hope your treatment goes well." And my mum, I have not heard from her. So it not that, I've obviously, as I've discussed in this podcast, have a lot of difficulty and that with my mum anyway.
Sure.
But it just drives it home, doesn't it, that there's no empathy or compassion if all you get from your brother, who, before you were disfellowshipped, you were sending memes to every day, joking, like constant conversation, and then you go to nothing, but not just nothing, but one line when you get diagnosed with cancer. It's like, okay, this is craziness. Like, it's a whole other level, isn't it, of
Well,
of being
you,
cut off.
you said it earlier. If their greatest hope in life is this dystopian reality where 8
Yeah,
billion people are murdered because they're not
yeah,
Jehovah's Witnesses, so that 8 million people can be
yeah,
happy, you
yeah,
have to turn off your humanity. You
yeah,
have
for
to
sure.
turn off your empathy, and
Yeah,
you have to be willing to cut people mercilessly.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
the God of the Bible would have had you stone
yeah,
your
that's right.
son or
Yeah,
daughter or whoever, right?
yeah,
And so think
absolutely.
about the way you have to think to be able to get into a group full of other people to pick
Mm,
up rocks. You're not going to kill
yeah,
somebody quick.
no,
And then to sit there
yeah,
and bludgeon somebody
just,
from a distance
yeah,
with rocks until they're dead,
yeah,
and
it's
that's
brutal.
somebody related to you. Well,
Yeah,
that's messed up. You psychologically, you have to
yeah,
do some tricks to be able to do that. It'd be
yeah, for
very
sure.
detached.
Yeah,
And you see
absolutely.
that cold detachment in the shunning. The way
Yeah,
I saw my brother at a concert, said hi to him and his wife. They turned around, like they turned away and looked in another direction. Like,
yeah,
again, I didn't shun them, and you don't
no,
shun your people.
no,
Shunning is an act you do to another person. The responsibility for that falls squarely on the person performing the act,
yeah, for sure. Yeah,
not you.
I think, yeah, if you're a loving person, like, love doesn't shun, like, it just
Yeah,
doesn't. If you love someone properly, like, you just wouldn't. Like, my first thought when my daughter came out, for example, was, I choose her. Like, that's just my gut reaction. This is my child. Of course, I'm not going to choose anything else. I choose her. Um, so when you have the opposite than that, and they don't just not choose you, but then they cut you off and continue to cut you off even at your time of being at your most vulnerable, is, yeah, there's no, that empathy is gone, isn't it? It's been cut off, it's been stopped. And even if they do, even if it does come up sometimes, which I'm sure it does, they have enough things to, like, squash it back down again by placing the blame on you. Or, I even know that anybody who's a Jehovah's Witness that will get to know about my breast cancer, I know it will go through some of their heads that if she dies, she will get into the new system, like into the paradise. And that is the thing that they will think, rather than, we want this person to live as they want to live now. We want to help them. We want to,
they'd be
they don't live.
happier if you were
Yeah,
dead.
they would be happier if I was dead. Yeah. Well,
Yes.
being labeled an apostate, being disfellowshipped, it's worse than if you're dead. They would rather you died, because then they could have this big thing of, well, we're going to get a resurrection and we remember them and it's all going to be fine in the end. Whereas, yeah, as you know, being an apostate, you don't get, it's the worst thing
Felicity.
you could be. It's the worst thing. It's worse than being Satan, the devil, I think. Like, it's just
Yeah.
the
I just
worst.
I just protested at the conventions and walked through hundreds and hundreds of Jehovah's Witnesses with a
Yeah,
speaker playing words, including yours,
yeah,
about your mom not replying to
mm,
your notification about your cancer.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you're walking among all these human beings with a message of the pain and suffering that not only do they cause, but also that they themselves feel at times
yeah,
in some of these
yeah,
situations. And
yeah,
they're just mad that you dare make them look at that. There's no empathy. They can't
Mm.
connect. It's just, well, there's some apostate playing some
Yeah,
stuff. Do
yeah,
you hear what these humans are saying? Are you
yeah,
interested in hearing what other
yeah,
humans are saying or how your organization destroys lives?
yeah.
No, they want to live
Not
in
at all.
blissful ignorance and not
Yeah,
have to clean up the messes they create.
yeah, absolutely. It's
Yes.
just, yeah, they don't even want to entertain those ideas. It's
No. They want to ignorance is
mm,
bliss, and they want to
for
live in
sure.
it.
Yeah, they do. So they get anger then, don't they? I'm sure you saw it, or in I
Oh,
think
the angry
a
head
clip that you played,
shaking.
someone turned around quite crossly at you, didn't they? I remember seeing, and
Oh, people
that's the
turned around
reaction.
crossly. They sent out brothers to try
Yeah,
to block me. They did
yeah,
all kinds of things. Uh,
yeah. And all
because
you're doing is playing. You're just playing people's grief. You're playing people's
yes,
emotions, and what's wrong with that? Like, you should have empathy for other humans, not
they don't
get
want to
angry
hear.
and want to move you away, or they just, yeah, they don't want to hear it.
No, there wasn't if they were smart, they would have tried to engage me and tried to
Mm,
have a conversation with me, which would have tied me up or made me turn off my
yeah,
speaker. If they tried
yeah,
to talk to me about, hey, brother, and even feigned empathy in a fake
yeah,
way, they couldn't even
yeah,
bring themselves to do that.
no,
It was so dumb.
yeah,
But
it's
it's again, they don't get it. They don't
yeah,
have normal human
mm,
feelings anymore. They've
no,
had to turn those off to get by
yeah,
in the callous, cold JW world they live in.
yeah, yeah,
So, I'm so sorry for what you're going through right now, especially with the cancer and everything
mm, thank you.
and the shunning, but I'm so glad that now you get to see real humanity of people
Yeah,
rallying around you and people who
yeah,
actually care about you for no other
yeah,
reason than that you're awesome. That's
yeah.
it.
People that genuinely choose to care for you because they're good
Yes.
people and they like you. Like, I don't have
Yes.
to worry about whether my friend likes me because we're both Jehovah's Witnesses only. My friends like me because for some reason they like me. Like, that's just how it works. Like, you get each other, or whatever it is, you have fun together. It's really lovely being having that now, knowing that those people who you do have relationships with, they're on the most part very genuine, because nobody has to be your friend. Like, you're not all shoved in a congregation somewhere together and kind of forced to interact. And if you don't get on with someone, well, you're still forced to be like their friend, or you have to be nice to them. And there's none of that outside. It's genuine people, usually genuine people wanting to be your friend for genuine reasons,
Yeah.
which is lovely. Yeah.
Um, so at this point, you are shunned by everybody from your past.
Yeah.
Um, I would assume this did not go over well with your mom, but maybe did she just cut you off, or did you all have any final conversations or anything?
So I went to tell her in person just the week that I was being disfellowshipped. I felt well, I don't owe her anything, obviously, but I just felt I would feel more comfortable if I told her in person. So I told her, and then she said, okay, well, you know that I will have to shun you. I was like, yeah, that's fine. That's your choice. Um, and yes, so then technically you can still speak to someone up until the disfellowshipping announcement. But then she texted me the day after I'd spoken to her, which was about 3 or 4 days before, I think, the announcement, and said, I'm not going to speak to you from now. I'm not going to wait to the announcement. This is it. That was that. So I was like, okay, mum, fine. Didn't want our last cup of tea together or anything like that. It's like, nah, no, I'll cut you off a bit early. That's fine. So
Yes.
yeah, she very much just immediately was like, no,
Such as
yeah,
Jehovah's love.
exactly. Jehovah's love.
I was going to ask, if there's anything you could say to the people in your past, what would you say? Is there anything that you would say, or was that with your mom pretty much it?
I think Yeah, I'm not sure there's a lot that I would want to say to them.
Yeah.
I think I managed to get to say my final thing to the people that I cared about, which I was pleased that I got the opportunity to do that. I think if anything, I would just ask them to think about what sort of God would make you behave like this. So what sort of God, and why would a God make you cut off your child, your sister, your friend? Um, why it's obviously not a God of love. So what is actually the motive for doing that? And just ask them to think about that really. Um, because no loving God, if there is, or I don't know who's up there. I am still in the process of trying to work that out. If anything, if there was an almighty loving God, surely they would not need people to stop speaking to their family members and cut them off to worship them. Like, surely love kind of would rise above that, and someone who's the almighty God of the universe wouldn't need that to happen. That's a very petty thing to say, isn't it? It's very quite a needy sort of would be a very needy God, I think,
Yeah, that's
if
what
that
you
were
have
the
to do.
case.
Love's not exactly winning.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So I think I would just ask them that really. um And then also why, on a technicality, it's okay for them to see and speak to people who've never been Jehovah's Witnesses, or family who've never been Jehovah's Witnesses, but they can't or won't speak to me, because there's no difference really. None of us believe in it.
yeah, but you
I'm
know
not
too
going to
much.
be.
That's the
I
difference.
know that's
You
the
know
well.
too much.
There's a whole load of reasoning for that for sure. But I would just like them to think about these
Yeah.
things.
Oh yeah,
But
absolutely.
yeah,
Well, so I know that you're facing, some current challenges for sure.
yeah.
But I also know that that doesn't define your post JW life. So,
Mm.
what are some things that you do enjoy about your life today?
Yeah, lots of things. I get to express myself, and the way I look in the way I want to. So I've finally been allowed to be the goth that I have always been inside.
That's awesome.
Whether that's a good thing or not, I don't know. But I'm happy, so that's
Then
fine.
that's a good
Um,
thing.
so yeah, I've got tattoos. I've even got a tattoo that says apostate on my arm. I've got, like, just piercings, things that I've wanted to do for a long time. So I love that I'm able to express the way, I want to look finally, without judgment. I love that I have friends who genuinely want to be my friend, and there's no ulterior motive or nothing, them being forced to be my friends. Um, there's lots of things as well that I enjoy, like all the types of music that you're not allowed to listen to. So I love metal music. I go to like metal gigs and all of that type of stuff. Yeah, so it's all of that really that you can just enjoy without any guilt, or having to hide it. That's very enjoyable. I have a really wonderful partner as well, who's been my partner for 6 months, and who has just been absolutely amazing since my cancer diagnosis as well. And obviously wouldn't have met him, if all of this hadn't happened. So there's always, despite not looking forward to the next year of intense treatment, there are an awful lot of things in life that are great. I get to see my children live and be who they want to be. I get to have my daughter and her little girlfriend round, and they're really cute, and it's lovely. So I get to enjoy all those things, and I think for me that's more important than anything else, and way more important than spending any more time in a cult that would have me not live this way. So it's all worth it.